Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're on day 3 of our Finance Committee budget hearings. It is approximately 1:05 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please? Here.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Under approval of the agenda, we are going to tweak the agenda. We will hear first from the municipal court, and then we will go into Parks and Rec, then Community Services, and then Tourism. So we have a slight change of order, but before we get to the municipal court, I do, under Chair opening remarks, want to just allow a couple of minutes for Councillor Harris to ask some questions of finance regarding information that we've been receiving. So, Councillor Harris.
And, Mr. Chair, I also have something before you get to the municipal budget,
sounds
if that's
good.
okay.
Great.
Okay, we'll have committee remarks first.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this won't take long.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. So, Ms. McCoy, good to see you once again. So the questions I asked yesterday had to do with revenue. I mean, we're drilling down on expenditures. That's fine, but I just want a little bit more information, and actually some of it was a repeat. Gross receipts tax, property tax, and then Mr. Flitch we spoke late in the day about the interest income. He explained what seemed to be the disconnect there. But, and then I think we all received, and you probably had a chance to review I thought, very professional statement from former finance director Johnson just about property taxes. That kind of in his analysis, the level of information he had suggested that we might, well, he came up with a number of 10.8 million as opposed to 13.1, I think we have here. And so I don't know if you'd seen that, if you had a chance to think that through and respond. I've had my own thoughts about what might be driving that, but if you could give us a little more information, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Harris, I personally have not had an opportunity to review the documents that you reference, but I have asked our City Treasurer, Christina Keys, to put together more detailed information on our analysis of the property taxes that are included in the budget, so we can provide you more information so you feel comfortable with the level that we are forecasting from previous years. And as I stated yesterday, Christina Keys is an experienced economist with the Legislative Finance Committee previously and has done similar forecasting for the state of New Mexico. So I'm assured that we are in good hands and that she will be very happy to present additional information. So all members of the committee are comfortable with the numbers and the revenue projections that we are including for FY20. I also want to point out that the levels of revenue budget for FY19, the current fiscal year, are conservative. So as we mentioned with GRT, we're expecting to bring in additional receipts in addition to the $105 million that is projected for the current year. So we'll provide that update.
Yeah, if she could clarify that a little bit too, because what I thought I heard her say is that the $105 million was a mid-year number that represented a figure that was approximately 8% over a prior similar period, the prior year. And so you kind of just seeing that in black and white would help me a little.
Absolutely.
Bit. Then great on the property taxes. And so then we'll be able to see a response probably sometime next week. Would that be your expectation?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Councillor Harris, I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Mayor Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like some information on going back to the mayor and council budget. In the recommended budget highlights, it says the FY20 recommended budget also includes additional resources for city council. Oh, no, wait, sorry, back up. FY20 recommended budget includes an accurate annual salary of $39,106, or an increase of 15% for city councilors to reflect the change in state law in 2018, which increased council salaries. I would like more information on exactly what that change was that gave that bump, because I was not aware that our salaries are tied to any index, and we are a home rule city, so I'm wanting more information about exactly, as much as I would love a 15% raise, I want to make sure how that's coming about.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Romero Worth, we're happy to provide that, as well as the information provided by our city attorney's office in our analysis of that state law, the city ordinance, and our analysis of the salaries as well.
That'd be great.
On that point,
Yeah, and I
Mr.
think,
Chair.
yeah, I was just real quick, and I think what we're gonna hear is, I think there's a resolution or ordinance where we follow county commissioners follow state law, and there was a bump to county commission pay, I think is what, something to that effect, but Councilor Villarreal.
and just a reminder on the 2018 to look at prior years, because there was supposed to be that same formula the past 2 or 3 years, so that was
Yes,
my request.
so that all just suggests that we ought to know more than this sentence, which is lovely, but it just makes me nervous. So that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lindell.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions that I don't think we have anybody from legal here, but I'll go ahead and direct them to a city manager. Are they just coming in, or are they just going out? And Ms. McCoy, on going back to the DWI forfeiture program, could we get on a conversation with legal of when they feel that that program will be, when we will stop having that program? How many vehicles we currently have impounded, and how long it would take to get rid of those vehicles? And importantly, can the money that is in that reserve fund, how can that money be used? Where can it be transferred to, or does it need to be returned to, I don't know who, but there's $500,000, I believe, sitting there, and can it be reappropriated? What do we need to do with that, and how long would it take for us to shut that program down?
Okay. So, you got that, Mary? All right, thank you. Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and get started. Our first item on the agenda is the budget for the municipal court. Judge Behill, welcome. And then, Judge, if you can just introduce any staff that you'll be having speaking.
I'm happy
us.
to. Present and far more knowledgeable about the budget, because she actually works on it, is my Deputy Finance Court Administrator, Jackie Baca, sitting here. Actually, there's really not very many requests or changes that we've proposed. I appreciate the opportunity of going before you today, and also the opportunity to work with the staff on this, with the county manager and with Mary McCoy and with Bernadette Salazar. We've had several meetings with them and had really meeting of the minds with regard to this. There's not very much adjustment. We have a flat budget request from last year and very little changes. So I actually stand for questions.
So you agree with what the mayor and the manager is
We have
proposing
no
for your
qualms
budget?
with it. We live with it. We're
Thank you.
happy with it.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, let's go ahead and get to questions. We can start with Counselor Lindell.
Sorry. In terms of revenues, have the revenues with the court stayed steady?
I'm going to let Jackie Baca answer that. I think that if you look at budget the way, where we've saved and maybe improved on revenues is jail costs. So I'm not sure how that's represented in your budget, but with regard to the revenues, they probably have gone down somewhat because the revenues are actually accumulated from the citations that we receive. And if you see the chart behind you, you'll see that some of the cases that that we've had have increased where others have decreased. We've increased in revenues for DUI and we've decreased in revenues for traffic citations.
Do you have an insight on why that is?
Let me first of all state that we process the cases as we receive them. The DWI cases, I think I've mentioned to council before, we are receiving more of the referrals for DWIs. There's a caveat with that. That doesn't mean there are more DWIs happening out there. What it means is there are DWIs being referred to municipal court that were previously not referred to municipal court. They went to magistrate court. That is what's causing the largest increase in our caseload is DUIs, and that's the largest, I hate to say revenue source because those dollars are all statutorily identified, but it does bring in some revenues.
I'm not able to get into the program right now that I want to, but I thought that I saw a sizable decrease in revenues. Is that true, Mary? Because I'm not able to get into OpenGov this moment.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Lindell, we can look into that. If you can provide a rough, any kind of account code or anything to give us some additional guidance. If not, we'll go ahead and research it
Here,
and
let
get
me
back to
pass
you.
and see if I can pull this together again.
It would, Mr. Chair,
Counselor Romero Worth.
do we have anything on the revenue? I'm not seeing anything in our packet on the revenue sources for the court.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Romero Worth, we have the detail sheets, which are the budget expenditure detail, and then in, I believe it's item number 3 in each packet has the summary budget, and at the bottom of that, you will see the funding sources by the revenue sources by fund, and those tied to the budget. that is
Okay,
being
thank you.
requested.
And so, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, so there isn't a breakdown of those municipal court fees and programs. It's just this one lump sum that we have in the expenditure and revenue summary.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Romero Worth, yes, that is correct, but we can provide you with any additional detail if you would like to see that.
I think that would be worth taking a look at, actually.
If I might respond a little bit, we do on a monthly basis give you a breakdown of the revenues that have been collected. And can I just sort of underscore this question so that there isn't a misperception about it? The purpose of a court is to administer justice and not as a revenue source or enterprise fund
Correct.
at all whatsoever. And I know you're not referencing that at all, but I want to make sure that that is clarified as we're talking about revenue sources. There is a case, State versus Maurer, that does not allow the courts to be a revenue producing source. And so really, that's wonderful because our purpose is to administer justice.
And I completely appreciate that, and that's not the reason I'm asking. It's much more, I think cities are looking more at their fees, what they charge, to make sure that we are not placing a bigger burden on particularly low-income people and spiraling them, being the cause of spiraling debt. And so that's more my interest, is just having a better sense of where we do see revenue and how that shakes out. And I do appreciate your monthly summaries. So I think it would just be interesting to see that, though, for the last fiscal year.
And for further clarification, Mr. Chairman, Councilor Romero Worth, in administering justice within the court system, we recognize the fact that you can't bleed a turnip. So we have alternatives when defendants come before us, and I will tell you, a large percentage of them are really financially strapped. So community service is an alternative for them. There has to be a consequence, and community service turns out to be the consequence for those who really can't afford. We don't have an indigent fund per se or anything of that nature to assist. So, you know, they can provide the consequences of their actions by providing community service to the community. Many of services are through the city as well.
And Mr. Chair and Judge, I completely appreciate that and am interested that we do that. So I guess some of this is just kind of better understanding what the various options are for people who may not be able to afford our fees, and then also just being cognizant of what our fees are and making sure that we're, again, not adding to people's burden financially because they find themselves in our system.
And Mr. Chair, Councilor Romero-Worth, I can assist you with that by providing a breakdown of all our fees and fine schedule for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Counselor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon, Councilor.
Just two questions. I noticed that one of the more significant increases percentage-wise is on the home detention monitoring program,
Right.
essentially doubling that, the amount within your budget.
You're
Is
correct.
that based on success, I assume?
It's based on providing more of alternative sentencing. Otherwise, these people would be incarcerated.
Right.
And so in lieu of incarceration, we are providing the ankle bracelet for many of these folks.
Right. But that's, I mean, so it's an alternative path, but it's been successful in your opinion.
We are doing ongoing assessments of all the programs that we have, as you can tell by some of the goals in our programs. So we'll better be able to answer that as we give you our assessment summaries. The increase in that does provide a benefit in general because, as I said earlier, it takes away from the jail costs, which I'm not even sure what they are for City Council at this point in time. But the ankle monitor is usually $10 a day.
Yeah, and I should say, I mean, it's a doubling of what was budgeted last year, but it's not a huge amount of money. It goes from $15,000 to $30,000. So, you know, it's not like, you know, it's a $300,000 program or anything.
Right.
So, anyways, we'll be interested to know, you know, in future discussions how it's working out for you as you get more data. And I mean, I think that it makes all the sense in the world, but it just has to work. And also, this is unrelated to your budget, but since you're here, I just wanted to confirm, as far as you know, things are moving forward in our GRT. As you know, in our GRT bond question, we had some improvements to your courtroom. Is that moving forward as far as you know?
We were allocated
Yes.
$57,000, and I believe April 15th was the date that monies became available, and so we're trying to make inquiries with regard to how that can be further processed. And from this point forward, our clerks will be behind a bulletproof glass.
Yeah. So maybe, City Manager, if you could keep the judge posted as you have more specific information, would be great.
Chair, Counselor, we're on it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Judge.
And thank you all for supporting that project.
Yeah, of course. That's all I had, Chair. Thank you.
Counselor Endell, did you find your information? Counselor Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Judge Vigil. I was just looking at the statistic page that we were given, and you explained the DWI anomaly, but the code enforcement piece, it kind of has gone up and down, 2016 to 27, and then 17 down to 2, and then 2018, 29. Do you have any explanation of what
The
that
best
be?
explanation is the one I've stated earlier. We only process the case or the citations that we received. So the years that they were down, the citations were down. The years that they were up, and you'll notice they're climbing this year, we're getting more citation referrals. So it's really we are tied to the hip to the
Right.
citations we receive.
So how do we get information about the actual statistics of
Code
people impacted?
enforcement are the officers who actually handle that, and, they're the ones that would be able to probably give you more information as to why the numbers are up or down. As we receive them, we process them.
So I guess depending on, like, even an animal that has gone up, so we'd have to ask our own, police department.
We're
to ask.
receiving more animal
Right.
citations.
Right. So is it complaints, I'm wondering? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out if
Are you
it's,
speaking about animals?
well,
or-
yes,
or
code enforcement, animal.
The most complaints we get through citation are littering, junked vehicles, those kinds of things. People who are not in compliance with one part or the other of the code. But the ones that I've seen that are most recent are the littering. And I really do think code enforcement has more information as to how they disperse their code enforcement officers and what it is. I don't know if they respond to complaints or if they monitor these things. I just know that when we receive them, we process them through the judicial system.
I think it's based on complaints. We don't
It's
really
based-
have a proactive system at this point, but,
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Vihil Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about pro tem judges. Are there, I note that there's a little bit of an increase from last fiscal year, but it's steady with what it is now. Do you still have interest by prior judges in serving?
Of course, yes. And there are 5 pro tem judges, and not all of them are available all the time. For example, I'm going to my state-required certification judicial conference coming week. I need a pro tem judge for 3 days. Fortunately, this didn't happen during the legislature because at one time 3 of my pro tem judges were working at the legislature. This year, only 2 of them were. So that only helped me get, shuffle between 3 pro tem judges. And for example, today, I was required to have a pro tem while I came here. So, judge are unexpected. Many of them are predictable. But you never know, when that need is there, because I'm a one-man show over there, so to speak. So if I become ill or if something happens and I'm unavailable I really have to rely on the pro tem judges. And so I really, I think we requested more than what we received, but based on the past disbursements, we're happy with the $20,000.
Well, that's good to know because I remember that retired district judges would come back and like serving in that capacity.
Right.
We kept them involved. So
Yes, I have 3 previous district court judges.
Great. Another question I have is with regard to the, I think I heard something about implementing a new information system. And I'm wondering if, and it has been a while since I've looked, but was there ever a goal to incorporate the data with NewMexicoCourts.gov?
We actually utilize NewMexicoCourts.gov for our own services to research, but the Justice Information System that we're contracted with, Justice Systems, provides the database where we have an input, all of the information that we actually get through every case and every transaction that occurs in the court. And that contract, I think, I don't even know, I think it's a 10-year contract. It gets renewed. We build on that in accordance to what our needs are. But New Mexico courts, are you calling New Mexico?
Yes.
Yes. I actually utilize that source when I have to do research. I think standard well, and so does the person, the compliance officers, both the electronic monitor and the officer who looks at the video arraignments when we have video arraignment. I mean, we do access that quite a bit.
And my question, it relates to whether the public can access municipal court records. And last I checked, I could not, but some municipalities' records are available on NewMexicoCourts.gov because I guess they've incorporated into that system. And so if you're a public person looking for something, you can find it all in one place. And so then I'm curious, how does one from the public research municipal records?
They could actually come to the court system, and we do have a form that they fill out if it's a public records request, and we do try to comply with the Public Records Request Act. And we do so judiciously because there has to be a purpose for the request. And we do charge the same. We follow the guidelines that the city does, actually, with regards to records request. So we do not have an open portal where everybody's citation is available, and I think that's what you're leading towards, and where, their judgment and sentence and things of that nature are actually available. And I'm not sure there's another municipal court in the state who does that. I'd like to look into it.
I thought I saw Rio Rancho on there.
Rio Rancho.
That's one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But I know that there are very few others, but I wondered if it was ever something that the court would contemplate.
Well, we certainly would, but, there's a lot of balancing that we would have to consider with that, because we do scan and download health documents if someone's presenting the fact that they were in treatment at the time they were supposed to be in court. We need the proof, and that would excuse them from being at court. So we download documents that are confidential. So it has to be done discretionarily, and I guess once a policy was put in place for that, we might be able to do it.
Okay, and then I was noticing on the charts that you provided, traffic seems to be down for, consistently over time.
Mm-hmm.
And with what the city is going through now in terms of speeding blitz and all of that, I'm not understanding these statistics. Is there a reason, or maybe they're counting something different?
So I think that's going to go up with the blitz that's out now.
Okay.
Because, again, we only process the cases that we receive. So traffic is down in 2018. In 2014, it was at its peak, and that is just because that's the amount of citations we received. Follow me?
Yes, I think you're going to get very busy. I hope I'm not one of those statistics. Okay, and then in the lengthwise diagram on page 1, I'm not understanding this, and maybe I'm not reading it right. It's under repairs and maintenance, second line from the very bottom. On the very right, it shows a decrease, but then the explanation says an increase in the need due to age of building.
That is going to be for next year.
Am I reading
It's been
this?
down for this year, but we sort of prepared finance to let them know that we will be needing an increase, and our concern about the reduction is that the age of the building does need some repair work.
I guess I'm not understanding it, because it says the 19 base budget is $9,000, and the recommended for fiscal 20 is $5,000.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Vihil Koppler, that is correct. The change between the current fiscal year and next fiscal year is a decrease. As the judge indicated, she has shared with us and with our, we'll be sharing with our capital team the needs for her facility. And as the building ages, there are an increasing need for repairs and maintenance. So as opposed to addressing it piecemeal in the current budget, what we're doing is Director Wheeler is addressing all of the capital needs citywide with each of the directors. She's meeting with us, each one of us individually, to document what the needs are and put together a more comprehensive plan throughout the city.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion regarding the municipal court's budget?
Move to approve?
A motion, there's a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Judge. It's good to see you. Okay, that brings us to our Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Munoz, if you would, before you get started, just introduce us to the staff that will be speaking so that our recorder can keep accurate notes as to who said what, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, wanted to thank you for your attention today. Also wanted to publicly take this time as I introduce folks. Please grab a seat. That will be helping me present today. Also wanted to thank Director McCoy, Director Salazar, and Manager Litzenberg for helping us through this process and providing guidance, including their staff, with a lot of help. So thank you. Thank you. And so from your left to right, we've brought a few members from the Parks and Rec team. And before you think, well, who's running the ship back there? We have very capable up-and-coming leaders also running Parks and Rec while we spend an hour with you today presenting our budget. But from left to right, Jerry Schilling, Liz Roybal, Melissa Bustos, Jennifer, Deborah Trujillo, and Richard Thompson. Jennifer Romero, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Jennifer. Apologize.
Mr. Chair, Director Munoz, would you mind giving us their titles as well?
Sure. Mr. Jerry Schilling is Section Manager. Liz for the GCC, or Genoveva Chavez Community Center. Liz Roybal is the Complex Manager for the Fort Marcy, Driscoll, BC Pool, and Salvador Pettis facilities. Melissa Bustos, Youth Coordinator. Jennifer Romero is the Admin Manager for the MRC. Deborah Trujillo is the Admin Manager. And Richard Thompson is the Director for Parks. Welcome. And so, to begin with, I'll start with the budget highlights. And as we go through the presentation, one of the things I did want to highlight as I begin is been really a learning experience and a great experience for me joining this team. It's been 7 months, almost 8 months of discovery, of planning, working with this team, and noticing that from feedback from others and feedback within the organization of improved morale. We are not where we want to be, but it has improved. We also have seen a great deal of engagement. And so those that have come today and come to listen have mentioned, their desire to learn more about the budget and be more engaged and more involved. And so thanks to the team members up front and also the team members who have joined us today. Thank you very much. So we get budget highlights. FY20. The Parks and Rec Department will see an increase of $1,019,896, or 5.8% in FY20. The primary drivers of this increase are related to an increase in personal services, totaling $618,000, or 7.9% of that. Contractual services, utilities, totaling $567,000, or 22%. The FY20 recommended budget also includes a 2% pay increase for ASME employees and a 2% pay increase for non-union employees. An increase to bring non-union employees up to the market level pay, as was recommended in the external classification and comp study. The Parks Department will add one position to help with capacity to plan events and city-owned properties. As you know, Barbara has been a team of one for many years, and so we are very excited about this additional investment. Additionally, we also appreciate the significant investment with the 2018 GRT bond that the city that you approved, and we will be able to invest in upgrading our recreational centers equipment throughout the city. Additionally to that, there are some other investments that we are proposing. A $48,000 investment to replace diving boards at Genoveva Chavez that are needed for safety reasons, and a $25,000 investment in a new shade structure for bicentennial pool, so that we can use those for our youngsters, adults, and sometimes for the doggy dip that many of you also enjoy and participate in. So specifically on the divisions for administration, the division will see an increase of $26,000 or 7.3%. Primary drivers for this are areas of supply, contractual services, and operating costs. As an example, we are increasing events, and we've seen an increase in attendance, and so with that come some expenses related to fire, additional police or security services that are needed. Additionally, we plan to expand and provide more services for the south side with those events over the summer, and so those are related costs. The Genoveva Chavez Community Center, the division will see an increase of $146,000 or a 3%. Primary drivers are personal services and utilities. Now, within that, I also wanted to talk about some creative things that we have done within the budget. And for that, I'd like Jerry Schillings to take a moment to talk about our idea of leasing equipment versus purchasing, which has been the practice for many years.
Chairman, council members, Mayor. One of the things that we've experienced at GCC in my tenure at the Genoveva Chavez Center is the fact that the equipment is aging along with the facility, and again, with the amount of use that we get on a regular basis, is that it is breaking down and going in disrepair. We don't have a current provider of services here in Santa Fe. We bring them up from Albuquerque. There's no one locally to work on those machines. And with that, then, I have suggested and advocated for a lease of a new machine, new cardio and new strength equipment for the Chavez Center. And what that entails is that we would be able to, and I've looked at financing and have got quotes and estimates of financing on this equipment for both the cardio and the strength. And what happens is every 4 years, we'll get the brand new whistles and bells, and in turn, the lifespan of a cardio system is between 4 and 5 years of age. But every 4 years, every 48 months, we would renew that with the newest equipment on the market. And with that, then, we would not have any additional costs as far as repairs, because it would all be under warranty. All this equipment would be warranted, and so if the belt goes out on a treadmill, it's covered. The cost of bringing them up from Albuquerque is covered. The same thing with strength equipment. Again, we have a similar circuit that we would like to replace. Again, when I talk cardio, I'm talking treadmills, recumbents, bikes, so on and so forth. Strength, I'm talking about a circuit where, again, there's stacked weights. The particular brand is a hoist. Kind of it's a circuit that you go around. There was between 15 and 18 pieces of equipment that you can get multiple pieces of workout on. Again, the cost for those, again, is incurred only in the fact that we would not have any, and the lifespan of strength equipment is between 6 and 8 years. But we would be able to replace it every 48 years with anything new, or we just keep the same lease and we could buy this out at the end of that lease at $1 at the end of that lease. And I've looked at 48 months worth of leasing.
Hey, thank you, Jerry. And Chair, councilors, one of the things I also just briefly mention on that, so just that action alone saved us $22,000 or 90% of that budget line. and also saved a lot of pain points as far as some of our patrons waiting for weeks or months to utilize some of the exercise equipment. So in the Municipal Recreation Center, the MRC division will see an actual decrease of $36,000 or 1.1%. Although personal services and utilities increased, they were offset by equipment and machinery revision that we thought we could manage without. On the Parks, Trails, and Watershed, the division will see an increase of $448,000 or a 6.8%. Primary drivers also include personal services, utilities, and other items such as operation costs as we increase our dog parks and increase services to parks. We are increasing some of our supply needs. We are also working with things like syringes, and so Kevlar gloves and safety gear, safety equipment for our crews are vitally important, and so we have increased costs or forecasted costs in that area. On the recreation side, the division will see a $435,000 increase or an 18% increase. The primary drivers in that increase are in the areas of also personal services, transfers out to GCC, and services to other departments as well. I'd also like to talk about now some of our goals for FY20. And I won't read all of these, but just wanted to highlight a few of them. Our goal as a Parks and Rec department is to staff up to 100% to ensure that our response times are in order and that we are providing service delivery. We want to improve constituent experiences. We want to modernize, look at our permitting and fee structure to make sure it's simplified and to make sure it is safe and easy for our constituents to understand. And we do want to increase our facility and pool uptime by 15%. Additionally, we think our employees are important, and in the theme of people first, we want to increase development and ensure that we as leaders of the organization are spending time and ensuring that our employees are engaged. As mentioned, due to the engagement and the morale improvement, our attendance is statistically up. We see that more of our employees are up and about, and it's also, I think, telling that after we work with scheduling and now have some of our crews out and about at 4 a.m., that they still come to work and still do their job and get it done. So that's very much appreciated. Some of the highlights, and I'll have Melissa talk about this here in a little bit, is that we want to help and do our part in the class and compensation adjustment to remain competitive as an employer in the city of Santa Fe. And we want to increase our outreach to public schools and youth groups for participation in our rec centers. One of the things that we are very proud of and fortunate to have is the leadership in Melissa Bustos with that program. So if Melissa, you would take a couple of minutes to explain what you do and some of the impacts you've had in our community.
Council. The GCC youth programs consist of a 9-month after-school program, school closure day camps when the public schools are closed, half-day sports camps, seasonal winter break camps, a spring break camp, and summer camps. All programs are designed to be festive with the mission of providing fun, educational, and safe programming. That is our mission. So while attending the GCC youth programs, children discover and partake in a diverse range of activities that include outdoor recreation, swimming, ice skating, court sports and games, arts and crafts, fun with food projects, and educational field trips. The GCC programs are staffed, the staff are committed to providing a healthy lifestyle and providing access to recreational activities for youth in our community. The programs generate approximately $200,000 annually and serve over 10,000 children and their families. More importantly, the revenue generated is meaningful, but the true impact for me, being part of the youth programs, is reflected in the positive effect our programs have on the children in our community and their families. The programs the Chavez Center offers give an outlet for the children to socialize, physical activity, and a healthy lifestyle, as well as providing parents with the peace of mind knowing that their children are in safe hands. This past summer, we had record numbers. We had 1,061 participants overall that we offered. So, we had over 1,061 participants, which included 9 weekly full-day recreational sessions, 7 half-day sports camps throughout the summer, which included 2 basketball camps, 1 volleyball camp, 1 soccer camp, 1 baseball camp, and a dance and cheer camp. We also partnered with Jen and Marty Sanchez to offer 6 weekly golf combo camps, and something for everyone, Our after-school program, we serve between 30 and 35 children weekly. We provide children with a healthy snack, an hour of varied recreational activity. After the activity, homework help is available by youth program staff. And so for all of the programs that we offer, there's the active, recreational, healthy focus component to it.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. So that Melissa and her team and the rest of the recreation team are doing just a fabulous job. So I would also then like to focus in on the MRC complexes, are some of our goals for FY20. We plan on looking at our irrigation systems to make sure that they are as efficient as they can be, and we are saving on water. One of the items is the modernization of just the play structure in the golf course, for example, the order of the holes for play and pace. So we want to implement that. We also look at implementing an annual membership, so that as patrons come in, they don't necessarily have to pay as they go, or play and pay. That's not the word to use. But as they play golf, this is a yearly membership where they can just come in. It'll save on some of our fees as well. So the goals for Parks, Trails, and Watershed, again, also to be at 100% of our budgeted staff. Another focus is to also monitor our very aged irrigation system and minimize water loss. Additionally, we've had some optimization now, and you've seen some improvement. You've seen improvement in our service delivery and our ability to work on parks, open spaces, and the medians. As you recall, we average about 380 medians, 177 linear miles of medians, in addition to 77 parks and other open spaces. With some of the areas that we do service, they total up to 93 green spaces that we take care of as a team. Recently, we've seen, what we did this year is we started in February versus starting at mid-year with some of our activities in treating the soil and getting ready for the growing season. We've had some really excellent feedback on Facebook, and obviously, if it's on Facebook, it's got to be true. But some of the comments include, I moved here 3 years ago, and it looked like a third world country. Thank you for what you're doing. Then there was another comment. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you for taking care of the medians on this street. Now take care of the potholes. But we heard comments like that also. You took care of these medians, now take care of these other medians. And so on and so on. So obviously the need is still there. We've taken some steps, not where we want to be, but definitely progressing in the right direction. And then the recreation goals for FY20, we want to continue to closely work with the facilities team, who've been a good partner to ensure facility and pool uptime. We want to increase our outreach to our school districts and youth groups to get them into our parks, to get them into our centers and increase volumes in membership. And again, as mentioned, one of our long-term goals is to review and look at permitting and our fees to ensure that they are user-friendly and they're fair for our constituents. And we will continue to work together as a team to see more cross-marketing and more teamwork amongst the divisions and amongst Parks and Rec as an entire organization. So those are some of our goals for FY20. I do have a list of accomplishments, but I can pause there for questions. If there are questions, we will stand for questions.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Munoz. I'll actually start with the questions for a change. Last year during budget hearings, lifeguards was the big to-do. There was a lot of discussion about lifeguards. Where are we on lifeguards? I see that one of your goals is staff up and right staff to improve service delivery for swimming pools. I assume that's what you mean, but can you dig down into that further for us and tell us where we're at and if we're making any progress in regards to lifeguards?
Sure. I'll bring up to the podium, if it pleases the committee, Mr. Chair, Matt Cottle, the natatorium manager, to cover some of the action items. But I can tell you that we've worked on several. Matt, if you want to come up and answer some of the activities we're doing, that we've had a series of 3 action plans to improve the recruitment of lifeguards and how we optimize scheduling. One of the areas that we've been working on has been optimizing our schedules. And Matt Cottle is the manager natatorium for the Genoveva Chavez site.
Chair. Can I hide behind this? Over this past year, we have recruited 96 lifeguards from various places, social media, job fairs and such. We've created 4 lifeguard classes, all of which have been free to participants. Of those 96 recruits, the City of Santa Fe has hired 6. Of those 6, 2 remain with the City of Santa Fe.
And what do you attribute that to? The reason we only have 2 as opposed to all 6?
Mr. Chair, councilors, we attribute that to there is a lengthy, difficult pre-test to get into the lifeguard class. The majority of those folks did not pass the test. Once we got the folks into the class and successfully completed the class, there has been a lengthy hiring process that cripples us.
Now, what about how are we losing lifeguards due to other places because of what we're paying them? And will the class and comp study address that?
Mr. Chair and councilors, yes, I believe that we are losing lifeguards to other facilities, both here in the city, in the county, and local communities or close by communities like Los Alamos and Poake. Class and comp study should bring us closer, but we are challenged by our compensation to lifeguards.
So, and maybe Ms. McCoy, you know the answer to this. Do we know for certain that the class and comp study is going to up salary for lifeguards?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking up that information right now to provide an answer. So if you can circle back to me.
Okay. Does any committee members have questions regarding lifeguards? Councilor Worth? No? Okay. My next question, go ahead, lifeguards.
What are we paying our lifeguards right now?
Chair and councilors, Hill Coupler, we're paying lifeguards $11.40 an hour coming in. Classified full-time or part-time folks are making just over $12 an hour.
And I understand that places like El Gancho and some other competitors, maybe even at Las Campanas, are paying somewhere around 14.
That's correct. They're paying a little bit more, and they're hired on the spot. So you may have an interview with me today, and if I like who you are and what you're about, I can offer you a job immediately. Whereas here with the city, the process is lengthy.
And so I heard you say that I know they have to have lengthy certification. We train them for free I suppose they're being paid when we train them, maybe, I'm not sure, and then they go to those other organizations at $14 or so?
Mr. Chair and Councilor Hill Coupler, yes, that is correct. We have had confirmation that some of the folks who we have trained are at other facilities within Santa Fe. Our hope is that we are doing our best to saturate our community with lifeguards. This is a national shortage. This isn't a city of Santa Fe problem. And I think that we're headed in the right direction to accomplish that goal.
So I guess I'd be interested in the comp plan and if it even is going to address it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, yes, the classification and compensation plan does recommend that the swim pool lifeguards be increased to $13.88 an hour. These are AFSCME employees, so this is included in the collective bargaining reserve that is set aside in the Human Resources Department budget this year, and that will be negotiated with AFSCME.
Mr. Chair, I do have one question. We had talked in a meeting a couple weeks ago about maybe targeting a different demographic. Has there been any work in that regard in terms of recruitment? Maybe not just aiming at, I don't know where the age is, 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds, maybe to people who are on the other end of the spectrum?
Mr. Chair, Councilors, Councilor Romero Worth, yes, we have discussed that, and we are working with the finance team and the HR team. The recruitment efforts are there. So as Matt mentioned, we brought in 96 candidates. Right, the last batch was probably the biggest batch that we've had. There were about 35 or 37 that failed the pre-test, and so while the efforts in recruiting are there. Then it begs the question is, are we then recruiting in the right places or recruiting the right person? We talked about recruiting professional lifeguards who are currently doing this or others. So we are looking at that. The other actions that we're taking, for example, is launching and have proposed a shallow water lifeguard, so that the testing for there is not as difficult. The other proposal that we have in our budget is for a temporary agency to hire on-call lifeguards who are already certified. Additionally, when I mentioned optimized schedules, previously the lifeguards were scheduled, and Liz can talk more about this, but the lifeguards were scheduled within the individual recreational units. So Fort Marcy had their schedule, Salvador Pettis had their schedule, and then Genoveva Chavez had theirs. What we've done now, we've put them all in the pool to optimize scheduling so that there are fewer, if any, pool closures. And we've had good feedback. We've seen an increase of or a decrease of pool closures. Liz, other comments on that?
Chairman Abeyta, councilors. Yes, John, I'd like to add that Denise Dominguez, who is our pool manager for the smaller sites, Salvador Pettis and Fort Marcy, Bicentennial will be open in about a month, have done a very good job of partnering with Matt and Abby over at the Chavez Center so that we're sharing our resources. Unfortunately, throughout the years, we have had reduction in staffing, and that's realistic. And, I think Matt can tell you that when we first opened Chavez Center, we had something like 28 positions. We lost a pool manager and an assistant pool manager, so that's a spiraling down effect when we're short a lifeguard. Typically, a manager or an assistant manager would get on the chair. The other thing that we have to think about is we're staying open, but we're not opening to capacity. We're having to limit the number of patrons in our pools because it's a 40-to-1 or a 25-to-1 at Bicentennial. So we continue to partner with the Chavez Center. We have Salvador Pettis closed right now. That has helped with 6 more staff. With those 6 staff, will probably go to Bicentennial because we've only got 2 recruits right now for Bicentennial. Thank you.
Have we given any thought to making the lifeguard positions temp as opposed to classified? Because one thing, so we could pay them more, because a 19, 20-year-old isn't interested. And Councilor Villarreal actually got me thinking about this. We have the awesome benefits, health insurance, retirement. For 21-year-old, I'm still on my mom's health insurance till I'm 26, so I'm not worried about health insurance. Retirement, it's 30 years. I don't care about retirement. So I'm going to go make $20 at Las Campanas, even though the city's offering me a package worth $24 because of the benefits. I'm not interested in benefits at 21, 22 years old. Have we ever considered that as maybe a way to attract lifeguards, or are we restricted by some kind of city rules or regulations from doing something like that? Because, like I said, they're not interested in the benefits, and maybe we can pay them a higher salary because we're not having to pay the benefits.
Chairman Abeyta, City Councilors, I think that's a great idea. We are utilizing the temporary agency, and that's something I probably have to follow up with Director McCoy and Director Salazar to see if there are any issues with utilizing compensation on a temporary basis to recruit more lifeguards.
Mayor, did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think, John, Mr. Munoz, it'd be interesting to get a little more texture about the recruits you were bringing in. What was the number that you brought in?
96.
96. And what can you tell us about the failure rate, the explanation for the failure rate? What did you encounter with these 96? Because it sounds like people are coming in the door, and I guess unless you're there watching it, there's no way to understand why the failure rate's so high.
Yeah, Liz or Matt can add some context to it, but one of the things that I want to stress is that previously the recruitment was much lower. I don't recall the numbers offhand versus the 96 that came through, but the majority of those is the assessment. It's fairly grueling. Liz or Matt, you correct me on that.
Chairman Abeyta, councilors. So the pretest qualifies you for the class. There's a series of, you have to retrieve a brick from 10, 12 feet. You have to do, it used to be a 500, it's a 300. And what we're finding, it's sad to say, is that we have people that cannot swim correctly or proficiently to be a lifeguard. Matt, you're welcome to provide input, but I think what we're seeing is because we've been so short-staffed over the years, I would say at least 10 years, where we've had vacancies throughout the pools, we're not able to teach swim lessons. So if you don't teach swim lessons and you don't grow that program, what's going to happen is we don't have swimmers. We don't have kids on the swim team. Because why? Our WSIs, which are water safety instructors, are too busy guarding. They're not teaching. So this has become a critical problem, Matt.
Councilor Abeyta, councilors, mayor, yes, I would second that, is that the majority of the folks coming in to test are high school age children. There are a handful of retirees. There are a handful of mid-age folks, but the majority are high school age kids. To go back to the comment on hiring temps, I think that's a great idea. A lot of our high school aged kids can't fulfill a part-time classified position, can't fulfill a full-time classified position anyway. But the folks that are coming into the classes plainly cannot swim. They don't have that skill, or they have the ability to get a length across, and then they're so winded that they can't continue.
Have you, just out of curiosity, have you ever had to rescue somebody who was applying to be a lifeguard?
That's a joke.
As funny as that is, I have rescued a applicant when I worked at the community college.
Anything else, Mayor? Anything else on lifeguards? Councilor Villarreal.
Just to add to the fitness requirement or inability to pass the fitness test, I have heard, and I'm not making a joke, that there are less people passing or when they realize there's a drug test, that they choose not to be part of the program, or they don't pass the drug test. And I was trying to remember, when did we, I know in the past we didn't have that regulation. Is that correct? Maybe Liz can help me with that.
Councilor Villarreal, I believe that was in 2015. We initiated the drug testing, prior employment, and also random testing. And yes, we have lost a handful or a significant amount of employees both beforehand and during employment.
And do you think that's a deterrent for people applying?
Yes.
And that's a requirement that was, I guess I was trying to figure out why it wasn't a requirement before or prior to 2015 and what made that shift.
Councilor Villarreal, Mayor and Chair, I believe because it's a safety-sensitive position, it went under that jurisdiction where they would have to comply with that drug testing.
But it wasn't before a
Was not
sensitive position?
I think we're probably one of the only municipalities that actually do drug testing for lifeguards or aquatic staff.
On that point?
I'm
You're
not
looking
saying
at
that
me.
anymore.
Okay, thank you.
No. I do have a couple things to add.
Okay, Councilor Vihel Coppler.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment about temporaries, and I'm not sure, but if I recall, temporaries are for a period of 6 months. So you will still have their turnover. And if 6 months is a span that you're okay with, that would be great. But then if you're going to keep them a year, and so then you run into the PERA rule where you have to start deducting PERA. And you would still, I think the issue too is pay. The temporaries would have to be paid, whether they're classified or whatever, to solve some of the problem I think that has come up today. Thank you.
Councilor Romero Worth.
So can you specifically answer the question about what we're doing maybe to attract a different demographic? Are we doing anything yet, or is that just sort of an idea that's in the hopper?
Councilors Carol Romero Worth, we have gone to high schools, we've gone to job fairs, we've used social media, we're talking to our swimmers on deck. We've got a fairly large amount of folks who are retired, who are interested in a job but can't work over a certain amount of hours per week. We're reaching out to all bases, all the community. And we have a fairly good working relationship with folks at the community college, as Liz mentioned, at the other city facilities. We're really putting the word out there that we're interested in hiring all folks.
Okay. Great. And, maybe other health clubs as well. People who are active fitness folks maybe haven't thought about doing a little bit of public service, making a little bit of money. I don't know. It seems like, and I guess the only other thing I would say too is, it may be time to partner with the public schools and get a swim program going, so that we go back to teaching kids to swim, so that we build the pipeline. And I don't know, is that something you're talking about? Has there been any outreach to the public schools and trying to figure out how we go about building a program?
We are in the works of getting the Learn to Swim program going again. We're currently in a elementary school swim season. So this year we've got 11 local schools participating in Learn to Swim program, which is 8 weeks of instruction and a swim meet at the end. We've got roughly 300 participants. The school-age children are participating this year. So our plans are to expand out and get a program going again. Again, it hinges on the ability to have lifeguard staff to open those.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Munoz, regarding the MRC softball fields, you and I visited them probably about 6-7 months ago.
That's correct.
Is there money in the budget to address some of the things that we saw? And I know at the time I was actually surprised when Jennifer had explained to us the small amount of money that we put in maintenance for those parks and others. So have you addressed that in this budget?
Yeah, we proposed an increase for topsoil, and that will be through, Mary, I believe, a capital request. We're looking at that way, to fund it that way.
Mr. Chairman, the FY20 operating budget has a one-time cost for $35,000 for a Dakota top dresser. I believe that's what John may be referencing.
Yeah, that's the piece of equipment, and we will use that between the MRC and parks as well. So the parks fields and the MRC fields also. And then we'll look at the budget for the actual topsoil and needed materials to get those fields in order.
Okay, and then do you have a long-term plan? Those fields are aging. At one time they were brand new, they're awesome, but a long-term plan to refurbish the entire complex.
Yeah,
Sure,
we
we'd have
do.
to bond for it, but is it
Right,
on your
eventually,
radar
I think
anymore?
that'll, Mr. Chair, City Councilors, I think that'll be the phased-in approach, but the fields do need to be addressed. As of recent, we're seeing more activity, but previously, regional leagues have passed us by due to the conditions of the field, but they will improve.
They're highly
Better.
used by a
And
large
locally,
segment of our
definitely.
population.
Yeah, that would be the priority.
Regarding the Chavez Center, I think the camps and the tournaments, the leagues, they're awesome. They're amazing. My kids have all played in them. Basketball every summer. The refs, the staff is really good to work with. I am concerned though about the after-school program and just the small amount of children we're serving, 30 to 35. I don't know how that could be very cost-effective. And plus, I'm also concerned about the perception of how do you pick the 30 or 35 children, and are they getting a better program than children in, say, our other summer programs and after-school programs that we offer as a city? Because they have access to an ice rink every day, a swimming pool, and have you given thought to that at all, and how you would address it in a bigger picture and a longer term?
Mr. Chair, City Councilors, I think one of the issues there is not necessarily our capacity, but our staffing. Melissa, would you?
So Mr. Chair, Council, there's one full-time youth program coordinator. I have one full-time youth specialist and 2 part-time youth specialists. So in order to stay with the staff-to-child ratio, that's the amount of children or capacity that we can take. We also provide transportation from the neighboring schools, and based on the drivers, the programming, that is all we can I would love to do more, but at this time, that is all.
So, but my point is, maybe we need to do less. I mean, because I could imagine if we're only providing transportation and all of this services for only 30 kids, how many per child are we spending? And what about, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's very cost effective.
Well, in addition, Mr. Chair, City Councilors, in addition to that, we're also working with Community Services to see how we can partner and bring some of the youth from there actually onto our facilities and our site. And so that's kind of a work in progress right now, but definitely it's something that we need to look at. And we've reached out to schools. You know, going back to the question that Councilor Meadowworth asked, I recently met with the chief financial or chief operating officer Wagner of the school districts to see what we could do and work together with soccer fields. But in addition to that, we met with their athletic director, and I would like to see more youth and more programs within some of our rec centers. And I think swimmers, basketball, and programs or after-school programs would be great to have.
And by all means, I think summer programming is critical, and we need it as a city. But I get concerned when I look at the
ratios,
the
Mr.
numbers
Chair.
for after school that we're serving.
Council, I did make an error. So it's 35 children a day, and the revenue that we've brought in to date is $33,000. Registration is on a first-come, first-served basis. The cost for the program is $50 a week, so we are serving 30 to 35 children a day, which is about 150 to 160 children a week.
So is it this? Well, is it the same 35 children a day?
It's the same. Whoever, registration. Well, it changes weekly, but and it changes based on extracurricular activities that children are involved in. But I would say it's pretty much the same 35 children that attend the program throughout the school year.
And again, that's my concern is, how do we pick the 35? How come it's only 35? Well, obviously we know why it's only 35 because of cost. So should we even be doing it?
Okay.
Because
Noted. Yeah. So
maybe
Mr. Chair.
instead, like what you got to earlier, instead we expand the camps and the tournaments and the access to the facility to children instead of us, us doing both.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, City Councilors. We can look at that. We'll definitely take that as a takeaway, assess that, and look at the costs and benefits, and see if we need to recalibrate that.
Thank you. As far as the medians and the weeds go, I've seen a lot of activity in my district consistently over probably the last 6 months. Are we going to continue to see that from now on?
Chair, City Councilors, I'm going to...
And I hope it's the same in the other districts, but you've done a great job in 3.
It is on a rotation basis, and so we have a finite set of staffing that we have, and so we will rotate throughout the city and ensure that we're doing the best we can with the staffing that we have. So I would like Richard to cover some of the activities we've done. For example, again, I mentioned we're optimizing schedules so that what we have, our 42 some odd employees, work as efficiently as possible. We've increased hours from to start at 4 a.m. in the morning, so the crews work with hand held tools, since obviously that's too loud to crank up weed eater, right? And then there are also weekend shift work as well. Richard, would you cover some of the activities?
Glad to. Chairman Abeyta, members of the committee, we actually added some supervisory personnel. As you may well recall, the bulk of the employees on medians are temporary seasonal employees. So we did add a classified senior maintenance worker to the team. We invested in one of our older vans, so we have a backup van to ferry more people to the same spot. But what we're really trying to do is be in 2 places at one time. Beyond that, as John mentioned, we are starting earlier with the line trimming of turf areas and noxious weeds. And then we try to wrap that up by 7 o'clock before school and rush hour, at which point the crews move to hand tools and removing the woody perennial noxious weeds, specifically Siberian elms, to try to reduce the maintenance requirement ongoing. As far as the rotation, as John said, we publish our schedule. We update it weekly. But there are a lot of medians, there are a lot of weeds, and there's the time we have allotted and funds we have appropriated, so we're continuing previous.
Okay, that concludes my questions for now. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the issue of medians because to date, I really have seen very little activity in District 4 on Rodeo Road in particular. I drove today. Zia is not much better. Kind of the lower level area of Cerrillos Road is getting really bad. So I know in the past we've had, kind of when we go almost into the crisis mode being generated by really poor headlines as well as a lot of calls from constituents. And, what I've said in the past is that is just, it demonstrates failure. People drive by our medians each and every day, and if they see the same problems each and every day, year to year, it's not a good message. So we've done some service contracts in the past. Again, in the crisis mode, we've done things to get out ahead of it in terms of getting those service contracts in place. Now, for instance, instead of July 1, the start of a new fiscal year. So I guess, we're talking about FY 19 right now in the conditions, and I would hope that you've got budget remaining to start to address, maybe through some of these service contracts, some of the medians. Because what you've said, Mr. Thompson, and you've said this before, is that you can't keep up with them. There's too much. You recite the mileage, you recite the acreage, and I realize that you're in the middle of traffic, so it's not anything that can go real quickly. But so service contracts now, and then what do you plan to do for FY20 in order to be able to solve this problem?
Chairman Aveta, members of the council, and Councilor Harris, we did offer a proposal to privatize the maintenance of medians. This year it was much more than we pay now for our present level. The figures were based on research we did during the 60-day publish of a remediation and beautification of medians that was in 2016, and also on the spot contracts we enjoyed in 2017, I believe. Be that as it may, we did not get those funds. We do have a little bit of funding left in this fiscal year in service contracts. We will direct that towards some spot maintenance. But as you noticed in the previous cycle, spot maintenance, we were done in 2 weeks, and within a couple of weeks, the pernicious pests, the woody perennials, returned. And this is a ongoing and will be an ongoing issue, that the fact that we cut Siberian elms, and within a matter of weeks, they've returned to the same height they were before, and we hit them again. But we will apply the funds we have available in the next week. We have one more week to issue requisitions for a purchase order, and we'll look into that. As far as next fiscal year, we have no monies for private contracting.
So, Mr. Chair, Councilors, Councilor Harris, in this budget we do have $146,000 as a new investment proposal that we'll be utilizing to take care of medians and parks. One of the things that we are also doing is reorganizing. So So previously, the teams were set up by specialty teams. So as an example, with parks, someone would work on the irrigation, or a team would work on the irrigation, and then later on, maybe someone to mow would come in and work that. And so it would be done in sections. With this reorganization, we have the team that does kind of from A to Z, that either the parks or the mediums have a feel of it's getting done. It's not just halfway done, if that makes sense. You know.
Well, reorganization is another word for shuffling around. I mean, if you're short, you're short.
Right.
So for instance, I look on page 25, and this is under the section of Parks, Trail, and Watershed. This is service contracts. And actually, I think Mr. Thompson has already answered my question. I think the service contracts cover perhaps more than just the medians, but other areas as well, whatever they may be. And in FY19, it was $217,000. In whatever FY20 maintenance certified means, I'm not even sure what that means, as well as FY20 recommended, it's 0. So it's a 100% reduction in service contracts. And maybe you should say which service contracts are included in that line item on page 25.
Chairman Abeyta, members of council, and Councilor Harris.
Yes, sir.
We're not sure exactly when those funds disappeared. We itemized, as you see on the right-hand side, those are the contracts that were covered this year. Underneath the 100% reduction, you'll see gopher trapping, assistance in arterials, and collectors. So we entered in the value of the contracts as an itemized list. On February 21st, we were directed to not increase an existing balance or request. In other words, the 217 was already our request.
Right, okay.
So I had itemized value of each contract, which then rolled up into a 100% increase. I went back in later and removed those sums, but left the itemized list, and then somewhere that zeroed out our request.
You say left, you mean left the original 217 rather than the 100% increase?
That's correct.
Okay.
So does that make any sense to you, sir?
I think so.
I
Yeah.
can go on as
It's like,
know,
where'd it go?
I don't. We're looking into that, sir. We will try to address that in short term.
Okay, well, let's ask the finance department if they have an answer.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Harris, somewhere in between when we initially sent out the budget to the departments, they were to fill out OpenGov, itemize that has been done here. Subsequent to that, we each department was assigned a budget analyst. It would have been either myself, Andy Hopkins, or Kent DeYoung. And so Kent was the analyst for Parks and Rec. And somewhere in between getting it in OpenGov, downloading it into an Excel spreadsheet, subsequent meetings, there's been a number of meetings between budget and the various departments, and we would move the funds forward. I do not know how that was removed or who removed it, whether it was the budget staff or that. It's just not in this here version. Somebody took it out at some point in time. I don't know the discussions between the analyst and Parks and Rec, but
Okay, so we don't know. But you're saying that that's not the same thing as saying that it's gone away completely. I mean, I advocate we need to have at least a comparable amount of money back in there for service contracts. And I would rather see an increase. I don't know if a 100% increase is justified, but certainly a 100% decrease is not justified. And, again, Ms. McCoy, do you have something you want to add to that?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Harris, the $200,000 is not in this budget. I believe that's what Brad was getting to. So there could be a motion by this committee to increase the budget by $200,000 to restore this funding.
Okay, well, I'll be making a motion of at least $217,000 to go back in for service contracts. And basically, what you referenced, Mr. Thompson, was not only for the medians, but gopher trapping, Santa Fe Conservation Trust for trail conservation. I think those basically well, yeah, then the state corrections, which I assume that's in part for we've used them primarily, not necessarily on the medians, but on the some of the right-of-way issues. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on that from yourself, Mr. Munoz, or Mr. Thompson?
No, not Mr. Chair, City Councilors, Councilor Harris. No, we'll work with the finance team on this.
Can I add? This is sort of interesting to me, just as a process question. What other critical funding got dropped? And I mean, we just happened to find this one. Why?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Romero Worth, the reason we provide these detailed sheets, not just to the council, but also to the departments throughout the last few months, is for, at every single step of the process, for them to be able to flag this. And I think, as Brad indicated, this was not, the decrease that was included in here was not flagged for our staff. It was not flagged for Brad nor myself, so that's why it was included in the as-is in the recommended budget. But that's also part of why we are here presenting the detailed line item budgets to you. So if there are any other areas where we have either decreased or increased the budget that you do not agree with, now would be that opportunity for the committee to weigh in.
I'd like to add something. Now should not be the only opportunity, because, as you know, Ms. McCoy, we got these spreadsheets like this morning. So, I mean, quite frankly, as we were listening to Judge V. Hill in the municipal court, I'm sitting here flipping through Parks and Rec trying to get ready, and I haven't even looked at community services nor tourism. So it's a system that's kind of designed to fail, not unlike what we're doing in our medians. It's a system that's designed to fail and has been. So at any rate, that's part of that's. I don't know if there's anything that needs to be said on service contracts. I have another category I wanted to talk about as well.
Go ahead, Councilor Harris.
Yeah, this has to do with safety. We had a horrible tragic accident in the city of Santa Fe not too long ago. And the exposure within Parks and Recreation in all sorts of situations, lightning on a golf course, swimming pools, field personnel, temporary personnel who, are using equipment. Maybe they're familiar with it, maybe they're not. So in general, talk to me about what's embedded in your budget for safety training, equipment, and those types of things. I have one example I could pull up that, is negligible. It's nothing. But go ahead and answer, and then I'll find that.
Mr. Chair, City Councilors, Councilor Harris, Richard will go into more details. One of the actions that we have for our next fiscal year is training, is group meetings or tailgate meetings as well to cover safety. In addition to that, you saw our supplies line increase, and as I mentioned earlier, our crews really are now working with just a staggering increase of syringes and other issues related to pathogens. This is not a Santa Fe issue. I recall reading that Cherry Creek Trail Parks in Colorado closed for a day because they had 40 to 60,000 syringes that they found. So with that, we are purchasing our crews more safety gear, ensuring that they know how to use it. Some of our crews that work in the arroyos or waterways, we've purchased them rubber boots to put over their work boots because there are issues in cleaning some of those areas up. Richard?
Yes, sir. Chairman Abate, members of the committee, and Councilor Harris, as John has illustrated, we did get a 37% increase in our consumable commodity line, operating supplies. and that is where we get our safety equipment. If I may add one thing, we've had a remarkable, or something I would remark on, turnover in the leadership on our median crews. We now have a competent, capable individual right here behind me, Mr. Nate Size, and we will get him into work zone traffic safety planning certification. I apologize, we did not get that done this off-season, but I repeat, we are pressing forward, and he and his senior maintenance workers will certify as a supervisor and as a technician in work zone safety training. We've had a question about hard hats come up. As you may remember, I grew up in, or came up through tree trimming in municipal service, and safety equipment was always mandatory to go to the job site. We literally stood in front of our trucks, hard hat in hand, gloves, glasses, ear protection, and if we didn't have the equipment, we were sent home. We work in a union environment, so I don't believe we can attain that level of on-the-spot, instantaneous treatment, but we will pay attention to personal protective equipment as we always do. We will issue it with a signature of acknowledgement, and we will maintain the use of it in the field.
Very good. I'm glad to hear you're taking the steps that you described. You know, it's not just Parks and Recreation. I do believe you have probably as much exposure in terms of the functions that you serve as probably any department in the city. So it's a cultural thing for the whole city. It's certainly specific in terms of training, just having group sessions talking about it. Somebody who's trained and really observant and in charge, when they see a violation of the established protocol, they need to jump in and make sure it's corrected. So the example I found was on page 12. This is under GCC, under operating expenses. Now this is travel/training, then an account name, employee training /tuition. It was in this year all of $750 and has been reduced by $250 down to $500. So again, I don't know, there's probably other line items somewhere, but you know, again, that's a minimal number. Maybe that's not your only number, but certainly $500 wouldn't cover everything that goes on at GCC.
Councilor Harris, Mayor, and Councilors, a lot of the training, especially in aquatics, is done in-house. Matt and his group have acquired their certifications in lifeguard training, lifeguard instructor training, LGI. We also send folks to a certified pool operator management certificate. In addition to that, everyone besides aquatic staff, even clerks, customer service staff, we have trained them all internally for first aid, CPR, and AED.
So, Mr. Munoz, what kind of claims does Parks and are made, do you think? Again, so it's safety, you know, the Parks and Recreation, the exposure there on safety, but also just the activities probably means there's more claims perhaps than, you know, for slips, you know, a wet gym floor. You know, I mean, I could come up with all sorts of scenarios, but what kind of claims do you have? Do you measure it against any kind of national average, or how do you look at that?
Mr. Chair, Councilors, Councilor Harris, the claims, and Rich will have more details on this, but some of the claims that I've noticed recently, anecdotally, are things of where you know, a sprained ankle, you're working through and there's a hole, or injuries related to the equipment that we work with, so cuts or items like that. But I do appreciate your comment on the safety and the need to make sure that we take care of our employees. We will take that as a takeaway as far as the activities that we're doing currently. We're also working with Manager Litzenberg to share some of our practices. What we've done is previously we've had or we have safety manuals, right? But those safety manuals are in the manager's office, and these manuals are paper, they're manual. And so we've begun the process within our own department of collecting these manuals, collecting some of the digital copies, and putting them in one repository, one section where each of our employees from each of the divisions can access those manuals just for their education.
Very good. So I'm going to move along here pretty quickly. It's almost 3 o'clock. But I just wanted to say, you say takeaway. I want to hear mandate. Okay, that's the mandate that I would see the Parks and Recreation, whether it's your employees or the conditions that you provide to our citizens who are users of these facilities. I don't think we can do enough to really work on this because we have a ways to go.
Thank you.
Just as a follow-up, this was a discussion around Salvador Perez. It really came in Public Works. I had a question. This is previous. This wasn't yesterday, about the costs associated, the capital costs associated with Salvador Perez. I'll follow up on that. But Councilor Abeyta also, or Chair Abeyta, had a very good question that had to do with utilization rates. And we never really heard a response. I don't believe I did. Did you, Chair? So, again, we'd like to provide some information on utilization for Salvador Perez, please. This is, I mentioned yesterday, and I think we'll get around to it eventually, just the status of various enterprise funds. We call MRC. I mean, when I think of enterprise fund, I think of something that balances out. Here, our definition is if you get a fee for the service you're providing, that's an enterprise fund. But clearly, we know that whether GCC or MRC, there's a lot of monies that comes into those facilities. So, but that's a different discussion and something that here's one of my last points probably is I think a capital improvement that needs to happen at GCC is the acoustics in the community room. Again, that's District 4. I'll never forget, former Councilor Trujillo and I had a session on the resolution regarding our sanctuary, our status, whatever we wanted to call it. And even a small group, it's hard to hear in that. That was a very animated group and a large group. And so at some point, I would hope, because it's a great room, used in a lot of different ways, but the acoustics there make it uncomfortable and in some cases almost impossible to hear. So if you just put that on your list, I would appreciate it. That's all I have. Chair, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Lindell and then Councilor Romero-Worth.
Sure. So a couple things. I would echo the acoustics in the community room. The Water Conservation Division has been doing some community outreach meetings around the 5-year water conservation plan they are developing. We had an early meeting there. We had an older demographic come out for which almost a day long, half a day type of meeting. The microphones we basically gave up on them. The sound made it very difficult. We had actually people leave a community outreach meeting because they couldn't hear. They didn't feel like they could participate. And we will be going back there, I think, in May. Okay. And so I would agree that this is something, it's an important room for community outreach. We really do need to address that. A couple other things, the Salvador Perez, I would like to get an update on where we are in terms of addressing the situation there. And to the point about utility rates at that facility, I think we need to broaden that inquiry and understand the full, the kinds of programs that have been allowed there. The way that pool is structured has been very important for various groups. I think both the teaching of swim lessons, if I'm correct, and then also the ramp for that elder for the elderly and the senior center that is across the street and the folks who use that. So it's not just in terms of numbers, pure numbers. There's a variety of things of value that if we're going to be looking at the value of that facility, there are a number of different things that we need to be presented with, not just the sheer numbers of people using it. And then finally, the one thing we haven't talked about that I would be interested in knowing more about is how your department looks at water conservation of our fields and the parks, and what we're doing both with regard to infrastructure and training of employees about, do you just turn the hose on and leave it and walk away for, half a day, couple hours, and, while you go do other things? Are we being really conscientious in the way we use water to keep our parks and our recreation facilities clean or maintained, and are we doing the training that's necessary to again, not to beat a dead horse, but be conscientious about that. So those are my interests. I'd be, I think we're short on time, but if we could hear more about that, that would be helpful. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Bill.
Thank you. Mr. Munoz, hey gang. I just got a few questions. I think that once you start programming, in light of what Councilor Abeyta was talking about, I think once you start programming, it's really hard to stop doing that programming, because you may have 30 people that are so attached to that programming that they're going to come completely unglued if you say in 60 days we're not going to have this program anymore, because our priorities change. And as a city, our priorities do change. Different things become popular, and we put some resources and some effort toward those. So I understand the position that puts you in at times when you start a program and it starts to not give you quite the return that we're expecting it to give. So I acknowledge that those are hard things to do, and that the community leans on you very, very hard with those. But nonetheless, we really do have to prioritize our programming, and we have to prioritize it from the community and not just based on habit. We've done this forever, so we're going to keep doing it forever. We have to prioritize our programming because people want different kinds of things. For example, one of those being people want to play pickleball. And we hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. I don't know what kind of resources we put into that, but I've never even heard of pickleball. I don't even know what it is. But what's that?
You're behind.
I'm behind. I make 150 quarts of pickles a year, but I don't know anything about pickleball. What I did look up was to find out that for adults, it's the fastest growing sport in the United States.
It is.
So we gotta shift some resources and meet the needs of the community. And I'm telling you, I know that's hard to do, but that's incumbent on you to go ahead and make some of those hard decisions, because you're leaders in departments, and you got to do it. And hopefully you have people up here that will back you up on those decisions. So that's one suggestion. What's that? What are you doing about pickleball, John?
Mr. Chair, Councilors, Councilor Lindell. So we are working with the pickleball community, and it is the rage of the season. So many pickleball players. So we are working on some external tennis courts and looking at them and seeing what we could do. We are rotating and scheduling in at Fort Marcy or DCC because the demand is pretty high. It is high. It's a fun new sport.
Yep.
And Liz.
Councilor Dowd and Mayor, councilors. So pickleball is one of the fastest growing activities. And so early on, probably about a year ago, we ordered pickleball equipment for Fort Marcy. We laid out the boundaries, and we have seen it's just incredible how many people love it. We even bought them T-shirts with the pickleball logo. We're ordering another set of equipment for Driscoll Gym, and we're going to lay that out. I know Jerry and his folks over at Chavez Center. It's 5 days a week, and we have them at Fort Marcy for 3 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's just incredible. And I see the need. Mark Stess has approached me, and him and I have looked at some space at Herb Martinez. I know that they're talking about it in parks to now go outdoors. But as far as the indoor play, we're maxed out.
I know you are, and
The reason I mentioned it and wanted you to ask was because I remember vividly getting an email from a very avid pickleball player, which was forwarded to Parks and Recreation, and we got an email back saying, thank you, that's the fastest turnaround we've seen in terms of responding to a request. So you're absolutely right, and they are, in this case, on it.
my point to you is I'm not asking you to take on something new without knowing that you have to cut something else back. I mean, you only get 24 hours in a day just like everyone else on this planet. And I think that what we've done with Parks and Rec is it's unfair. We ask you to do more and more and more and more with same amount as you had. That's it. You only get this much. And I'm bothered by it. I don't think this budget is enough. I think that in trying to do what we ask for the medians, I don't think you can work any harder. I just don't think that can happen. And you know, it's kind of a zero-sum game. I mean, if we ask to add something over here, we got to get rid of something over here. And those are hard decisions because, like I said, the program you're talking about that Councilor Beta brought up, there's people that are attached to that program. But that program may need to be scaled back and eventually eliminated so that we can service more people that want to do different things. And those are very, very hard decisions. I totally agree with that. But I don't think this budget is adequate to do what we're asking you to do, particularly with the medians. And that's what Councilor Harris is talking about with more contractual. I don't know what the exact right number is or where it needs to be, but I know that we are not balanced out in this. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that I think that we do need a review of fees. I think that we have some programs that we put a fair amount of money into them, and they probably should be programs that nearly support themselves, and they don't even begin to support themselves. One thing I would ask about within the actual numbers themselves would be on page 7, we have special recreation leagues. At $63,000, we subsidize that with. A couple of years ago, it was $44,000, so we're up $20,000 in that. What are those leagues?
I don't think our pages match, so are you able to give a different description of what's on there?
Yeah, I'm in the actual from the original book that we got under Parks and Rec, page 7.
Do you guys have are you guys on the same page as us?
I'm on the City of Santa Fe Parks and Rec expenditure summary. It's a one-page,
Yeah.
very, very tiny numbers.
Mr. Chair, it would be page 7 of the Parks and Rec in the big binder.
Right.
I'm just making sure they're on the same page.
Mr. Chair, Councilors, Councilor Lindell, before Liz answers that, I appreciate the comment and realize that the budget and the resources we have. A couple of things that we're doing creatively. Richard and I met with a grant person. We're looking at applying for a grant that will hopefully help us out with tennis courts, and if that's related, we'll see what we can do to squeeze in a little pickleball. But definitely do understand and appreciate the.
It's on page 79 in the bound version that we received. It's
Liz, would you go over the
Yeah.
when they find that?
Councilor Lindell, Special Recreation Leagues is funded, that's a quality of life fund.
Okay.
Comes to us, and we utilize that for children's camps.
Mr. Chair and Councilor, you're looking, if you're looking at the bottom, you're looking at the revenues.
Yeah, I'm looking at no, it's expenditures. Summary by fund.
44,000.
And now it's up to 63.
That's driven by, I'm not sure what that's driven by, maybe finance can, quality of life money. It's money that we receive through a tax.
Seniors.
Okay.
This is out of the seniors budget, I believe. I might be mistaken, but I know that there is a group of activities that is funded through seniors for Parks and Rec. It shows up in Parks and Rec's budget, but it's actually a transfer in from the seniors community services.
Special recreation leagues, that's what that is? How would I have known that?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor, the Special Recreation League, the revenue received in is from the league activity. So if I join a league, I pay, $250 to be part of that league, and then the Parks and Rec spends on that accordingly. Correct, Deborah? Can you shed some additional light on that? Thank you.
Just before you start, because I'm not clear, are we saying that we are spending $63,000 on leagues?
Yes. What it is the money that is received it funds basketball leagues, 35 and older. It funds any particular leagues that the kids join. And what it is we can only expend that money on those particular leagues. This is what it's set aside for the referees, for the monitors, anything that ties to league activity.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Lindell, I can clarify, but this is a trust and agency fund, so we are custodians essentially of this money for the leagues. This is other municipalities do this as well. This is standard, but it is absolutely the council would have to give us the permission to be the trust and agency for this group or any other group.
Thank you.
Councilor Lindell, if I could just add that this is probably the #1 revenue generating program, our sports leagues. They actually get us in, we make a profit.
That would be a good question to know, because it seems like the leagues probably should be able to pay for themselves.
They do.
And, we shouldn't really have to be subsidizing, whether it's over 35 basketball or men's softball leagues or whatever. We should not be subsidizing those.
Councilor Lindell and councilors, that is Parks and Recreation nationwide is probably leagues are the best programs that are self-sufficient. So if we spend this money, we get the revenue back through entry fees and participation.
Thank you. So, leagues, the summer program, we've talked about reviewing the fees for that program in the past. I think we need to do that. And, you know, just prioritizing, and I don't know what kind of reorganization we would need, but I just don't think that this budget today, I don't think it funds the number of people that we need for some of the programs that we're trying to run. Particularly, I mean, Councilor Harris brought up the medians. We're trying to transfer in, maybe I'm wrong, Councilor Harris, $200,000 on contractual that we talked, is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
I just, again, think that people, we have too big a workload for the number of people involved for some of these activities. And it feels unfair to me to set people up to fail, to not succeed, and to put ourselves in the position that we've underfunded things so that we have constant feedback, which is warranted, from the public saying, this isn't how we want this done. So those are my comments on this budget.
Councilor, let's go to non-committee members. Councilor Villarreal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess I do agree with you, and we also have to think about the expectations that we've set for our community. We have so many amenities, and we keep increasing, and I think at some point, and we are okay to back you up on this, there are times we can say, we have a lot of services, a lot of amenities, and we're not going to add more. And we will back you up, at least I will, because I think that we just create this expectation that it grows and grows. And we have so many parks. We have the most parks probably for a city our size and facilities. So, yeah, the expectation's high, but we also have to temper that with the expectations or the reality of budgets and staff capacity. I wanted to move into a concern I think a few of us have had on the council, and I know there's been frustrations for all of you as staff of how we can better balance the project management that occurs within our facilities. And when I say that, I'm talking about upgrades, any construction that has occurred, that we have project managers that come from, not from the department that it's actually occurring. And there's been a miscommunication or lack of communication or lack of caring. I have no idea what it is, that project managers come in and work and they say this is what is needed to do an upgrade in our facility. They don't talk to staff. And when I say staff, I'm not talking about upper level management and communicating. We need to have our project managers talk directly to the workers that are at the level that are the day-to-day. And I say this because we've wasted so much money, and all of us, our taxpayer money has been wasted redoing projects that we've already fixed. And it's not just upgrades, it's like safety issues. So I'm just vocalizing this because I'm sick of it. And I think we hear it because we see amendments and change orders that we have to approve, and we're hoping that staff has that you all have vetted that. But I actually think that at all levels we need to be working in unison, and I'll talk about this with the Public Works when you all come forth, that this community or the communication and cohesiveness of understanding project needs really needs to shift. And I'm hoping with new leadership, with the fact that you say you value your staff, that we make sure that when projects are coming forth, that we talk to everyone, even the lifeguards, of what we need to make a change in our facilities so we can save money. I'm curious if you have or have thought about a strategy for this, because I really think that we're missing the on-the-ground level of project management. And maybe there were individuals that created the problem, but I just want us to work really hard on this issue in the next fiscal year.
Mr. Chair, Counselor, just to give a general statement to that, collaboration top to bottom across the board is something that we have been promoting since day one. It's something that doesn't happen necessarily overnight. You do need good leadership. You need people who trust the good leadership. You need leaders who trust their employees top to bottom. That's what we've been working on. It does say something to me that the Public Works Director is here to hear what's happening with the other departments.
Right.
Because she's trying to run a department where project managers understand the needs of the other departments. And we have Department Director of Parks and Rec who is understanding of the same. So, I mean, I think it should be, if nothing else, a very strong visual indicator of what we as a team believe in, because I hear you and understand you fully. It's a concern we share, and I think, in my personal opinion, totally biased, I get it. We are starting to make great improvements in that, and I think we're going to continue to get better. But for specifics around Parks and Rec, I'm sure both directors of Public Works and Parks and Rec could tell you their strategies if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Councilor, members of the council and Mayor, thank you so much for the question. It is a huge opportunity for us to serve the citizens better, serve our employees better, and for us to do better and more efficient work for the city. So one of the pieces of the puzzle is one that Director McCoy just mentioned a little bit ago, is that we are now meeting as a team with each department to talk about their capital needs. Prior, in the past, that was just a list that was provided and, ended up on ICIP. So now we're actually engaging in a conversation way up front of the capital projects. And one of the goals of that is not only to understand more deeply the needs of the users of the facilities and the owners and operators of the facilities, but also so that when we do put together a project for those facilities, we can make it comprehensive. Because we were even finding out, as we do work in a facility, there was this thing that needed fixed and that thing that needed fixed. And so we want to really have a much better sense. As part of that process, we're also assigning one project manager to each department so that can be their liaison to discuss as they come up with capital needs, get it on the list, get it understood, get it cost estimated. So we're really starting very early on in the capital planning process to improve that collaboration and understanding. And I think we have been having great meetings with the facilities managers as we move through these projects. And I think your recommendation, Councilor Villarreal, is a great one, that we bring in additional voices early on. In fact, we talked about one that we've been going through with making adjustments to the Fort Marcy repairs in the locker room, that you do the planning up front and you say, okay, we approve these plans, and that's where all the doors go, and that's where the changing table goes, and that's where the lotion bottles go. And it's a little bit hard to say, looking at a piece of paper, where is a good place for that. And so we've come up with an improvement to our process that we're going to not have the installer install those items. We're going to bring the users of the facility into the room when it's ready to install those and point. It's going to go there, it's going to go there. So we'll have counts instead of locations, so that there's much more control over that. So we're continuing to make that better. I think it's a really great thing that you highlight, and that we'll continue to highlight with our team.
And I trust, because there are new directors, that they would also make sure that they take the time to listen to the institutional knowledge that we have with the staff that's been here a long time, that have seen changes that didn't work in the past, and it may have been a good idea, and some new people would be like, why don't we do this? Well, we actually did do that, and this is what happened. So I want to just keep reiterating the importance of staff that has tenure, that has institutional knowledge, and to just keep us cognizant about that and consistently reminding us, because it will save us money, in my opinion, in the long run. Thank you for the update, though, about the project managers assigned to each department. I think that will be a start. The other question I had, because we got this booklet and I'm trying to go through it last minute, I wasn't quite sure about if you could just break down how many new staff with this budget you will be implementing.
Sure. Well, so Deborah can cover some of those numbers. What I know from memory right now is we have 70 vacancies, 218 employees. Double check.
70 vacancies. That was my other question.
So,
70 vacancies just within Parks and Rec.
Within Parks and Recs, yes.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Villarreal, HR staff is preparing what was requested on Tuesday as the position count for FY19 versus the position count in the recommended budget. But for the Parks and Rec Department budget, we are proposing one additional term position that will actually be funded out of lodger's tax. And this will be to assist, I think the budget highlights went over this, to assist in the special event planning.
It's great news. Okay. Was that just the only one? Okay. So were there any adjustments in terms of reclassifications?
I believe, Director McCoy, that's going to be a different exercise.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Villarreal, we work on with each department director reclassifications as they bring them to the HR director and to the finance director and to the city manager for review. So that's an ongoing as needed basis.
But nothing that, well, I guess I can't say, well, anything that we should know about, but sometimes we hear about it from staff, which we don't like. So,
Chairman, Councilor Villarreal, is there anything specific?
I don't
We
know,
can go
not
ahead
really.
and
I was
bring
just
any.
wanting to know if there was anything pertinent that we should know about that was maybe a position that, I don't really have anything in mind. I was just curious.
Right, Mr. Chair, Councilors, Councilor Villarreal, definitely as one of our proposals as far as our goals is a reorganization to optimize our workflow. And we will be working with finance and in the HR group. And as that it gets finalized, I will be happy to share that with you and other councilors.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Councilor Vihil Coppler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was glad to hear Councilor Harris's concerns about safety, and I really believe it's a big focus that we should have across departments. And so the comments that Councilor Harris made about this budget and implementation of safety programs and the like should apply across departments. Councilor Villarreal was talking about institutional knowledge, and I'll share, I know Ms. Roybal and perhaps Councilor Rivera remember when this city did focus on safety. We had 2 full-time, very well-trained safety officers who would go out and audit city facilities, offer training in all kinds of facets, some very skill-based to employees' positions, and we would invite OSHA to come along with us when they had time and conduct these audits and make recommendations for improvement. That is something I think we should get back to and not just rely on contractors that come in and out. And I know that that's something that is not provided for in this budget, and I believe the city manager has some plans for that, but I would like to see it an ongoing emphasis because it really is important. And it affects our workers' comp claims. I know you asked a question about claims, and so I would be interested in workers' comp claims, and of course that creates absences, which creates overtime, and those costs, again, are real. I'm going to go
Chair,
fast.
Councilor, don't mean to interrupt it, just to that specific point, just to that point. In this budget, we do have a safety officer and an outside evaluation to help get us a starting point on how to build back a strong safety culture within the city. So we do have in this budget citywide safety coming back as a priority.
You may need more than one, but okay, that's a start. Councilor Harris was also speaking to the maintenance, which I think is really important because that's been certainly a big concern across this community. And if you look at page 7, it does summarize, and I believe that the numbers are real. Repairs and maintenance has a 32.8 decrease in repairs and maintenance, a cost of $154,964 out of this budget. Now, it may have gone somewhere else, but it's out of this budget. So I'm very concerned and support all of the comments that were made about maintenance of what we have. It's like your house. If you don't maintain it, it's going to fall apart. And we have things that have fallen apart. The next item I want to ask, if you look at the table, we are obviously missing Genoveva Chavez facility manager. And I have never heard of that position speaking to us. I don't know how long that position has been vacant and why is it vacant. And I can't imagine, and that's one of our largest facilities. We have a section manager. We have Ms. Roybal, and I'm sure everybody else pitches in, but I'm not sure how we're managing that facility without a person, and why don't we have a body performing in that position? And how long has it been vacant?
Mr. Chair, Councilors, Councilor Vigil Koppler, the position after reconciling the POL, we were able to locate the position or determine that the position was still active. There were questions whether it was funded, or if it was moved to a different department. So that has now been determined, and so we will be posting for that position very shortly because it is needed. We need that position. And it has, to answer your question, Liz, Jerry, that position has been open for almost 2 years or 2 years.
Well, does it still exist?
It does. It does. That was the question, which was difficult to kind of connect the dots. It existed, if it was funded, if it was moved, and after the reconciliation, it does exist.
Is it funded?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Vigil Koppler, yes, it is funded. As I mentioned, I believe in the overview session, we took a deep dive into all of the positions across the city to reconcile the position listing that we have in the city. There were positions that I believe, as our city attorney discussed with you on the first day of hearings, that were on the books but not funded in the current fiscal year. There were also positions that were in double fill positions that we have encountered throughout the city as well. So department by department, position by position, HR, finance, and the departments have been working very closely together to reconcile these. And the position that you brought up today is one of the ones that was in question, and it is funded, and it is currently an authorized position, and the administration intends to fill this position because we understand the importance of this facility for our city.
Well, it's in our district. Councilor Harris is in my district, and we get, I don't know, I think we've gotten several complaints about different things regarding that. And I can't imagine that for a while, I think I heard you say that you've been looking for where that position went. That's amazing to me. This is a large facility. We've spent a lot of money on it. It needs a lot more care. Our maintenance budget has been hacked or whacked, and I don't know how we get along, and it goes to Councilor Lindell's points as well. So I think we need to get that position filled and get on with business. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Vigil Koppler, if you look at that, the repairs and maintenance for Parks and Rec is down $154,000. Most of that was one-time charges that for equipment and repairs. Once they've repaired it, they don't need to repair it the next year and the next year and the next year. So these are one-time charges that were removed from the budget. The other thing I think you need to think about this in context of GCC is going to get $4.5 million in capital. I believe Fort Marcy is going to get $1.7 million in capital. Sal Perez is going to get $2.5 million in capital from the GRT bond. So what you're not seeing in repairs and maintenance is being invested so that we don't have repairs and maintenance. We actually have facilities that function properly. And we're doing that through our capital budget and our bonding.
Thank you for that explanation. And it proves the point that when you have that much money coming into a facility and you have no manager, that's dangerous, if you ask me. So thank you for your information.
Thank you. Let me have a take it in, and then we'll go one more round and hopefully make a decision on this. But through all these pages, Ms. McCoy or Mr. City Manager, there are a number of explanations that are detailed throughout, but a lot of them don't appear to have a budget. Am I looking at that correctly?
Mr. Chairman, I believe some of the lines that you're referencing are itemized lines, so the actual total is above the itemization of the lines. So, for example, a contract line item might have $500,000 as a roll-up number, but we tried to give you, the staff at Parks and Rec tried to give you a very detailed description of what was incorporated into the $500,000.
Right, so on this the second fold-out that I have, it has general fund, special events, and quality of life. There's a number of things, and one part is the Southside Summer Series, and it doesn't look like it. It's the second page of our fold-outs. Yeah. I don't know what page it is for them, but same? Okay. So right in the middle, it talks about supplies for parks, and part of it is the Southside Summer Series, I assume. Is that still being funded?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I believe for FY20 is level with FY, there's actually an increase of $1,000 to the total for FY20 of $6,000.
Okay, because I guess the adjusted budget, okay, I got it. All right, thank you for that. The special events staff person that you talked about, that was a temp position, you said, and what does that mean?
Mr. Chairman, we are recommending to this committee that it be funded as a term position. Term positions are good for as long as we have revenue to support the position. So, for example, we are seeing an increase. Another recommendation that you'll see in the tourism budget later on today is an increase for downtown park ranger positions. Those will also be funded out of tourism funding sources. Those are two positions that we are recommending as term positions. If that funding source goes away, the positions, if the economy dips, we will likely see a decrease in the need for those park ranger positions and the funding source. If the funding source goes away, the positions will go away. It's a very fiscally responsible way of budgeting.
I think our special events coordinator right now is probably overworked. I think that position needs to be looked at long term. I can also, she's probably close to retirement too. She used to work with me at the fire department, and that was more than 100 years ago. So we should probably start looking into that, I would imagine. That way when she retires, at least we have...
Mr. Chair, she started when she was 2.
Yeah. And I missed the first part of this, but the 30 kids that are in the program at the GCC, do we know what areas they come from, and do we know income levels of families? Do we do some kind of application that allows us to see that?
So, Mr. Chair, Council, I would say we provide transportation from the neighboring schools, so Pinon Elementary, Chaparral Elementary, Kearney Elementary. In the past, we have done Nava, but we don't have any children currently participating from those schools. And I would say the youth program participants are probably middle to higher class participants.
Middle to higher?
And it's, yes, and it's, the fee for the week is $50 per week for the after-school program.
John, thank you for, I think is making best use of the Driscoll Center now that it's empty. I know there's video out there of me scoring a goal against a professional keeper at a local, but thank you for doing that. And I don't know if that's an area where we can maybe throw some pickleball in there or do some other things, but I ask you to continue to look at different ways to bring income to that facility or bring income to the city through that facility. Give me a second. This is a large budget. With regards to the MRC, we did, the city did put $500,000 from the bond into that. We were matched by the county for another $500,000, and the state legislature, I believe, also gave us some additional funding this year. I didn't see that in the budget. Is that somewhere else? I don't know if you know Jen or Mr. City Manager, Ms. McCoy.
Mr. Chair, Councilor, I'd imagine if that's part of the bond package, it's probably at the end of the book under the capital expenditures, the list of things that have previously been approved.
Would the counties match as well as the state legislative funds that they approve be in there as well?
Mr. Chair, Jennifer, do you want to take us through that in the reimbursement process?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, council members, the county matching funds is not showing on our side yet. It'll be a one-time reimbursement from the county once we provide proof of our expenditures towards the Saukar Valley Improvement Project. However, yes, City Manager Litzenberg is correct. The $500,000 from the city is in a capital fund and available for use as we begin this project. The legislative funding of $250,000 will also be coming to the city.
1.2 million, a lot on top of what's already being put into there. Are we going to be ready for great tournaments that are going to be able to bring lots of people into this community? Or how far are we away from that?
Mr. Chair, council members, we're currently working towards this goal. We have met with the Santa Fe Soccer Board. We've met with Greg Miller with MRWM, who is a landscape design and architect company, who's also on the city's on-call contract system and under CES pricing, I believe, to work with us in starting this project and moving forward as we progress into an investment of Saukar Valley, continued investment in Saukar Valley, with the potential of bringing in revenue through tournaments and different activities.
Mr. Chair, councilors, one of the, I do want to highlight that one of the main focuses of the priority is obviously usage for our local players, and then also to then attract regional leagues. And in the past, before you got here, I made the comment that previously we were skipped over because of the conditions of the fields. However, we are very hopeful and excited about the new construction. Currently, we have 700 to 800 soccer players or soccer athletes that are displaced, and we just do not have the space for. And so this is needed. I think this soccer field, in addition to pickleball, is one of the fastest growing sports out there, and it's great to see youngsters and folks up in their 70s or 80s out there still kicking that ball around.
A couple years ago, I think we were having issues with league officials and the payment for them. Or is that still a problem, or is that kind of taking care of itself? Not for soccer, it was for the GCC, and it was for the basketball league specifically.
No, we've since the RFP is not being required for monitors and referees, we've addressed that issue, and we're having a much easier time. The challenge we're faced with now is bringing in younger officials, just as we were looking for guards. We're looking for younger officials who will take on the responsibility and that challenge of becoming a certified referee and be willing then to participate. We're paying a fair wage, $25 a game for referees and $18 a game for monitors. So it's somebody can make some pretty good walking around money.
The 70 vacancies, I think, that I heard you say, are many of those seasonal employees? It seems like a lot of vacancies. I just want to know if a majority of them are seasonal.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, yes, majority of them. There are 46 seasonal positions. Currently, we have 120 classified full-time, 25 classified part-time, 1 exempt, 20 temporary full-time, and 6 temporary part-time. But those numbers are still, we need to concur that with HR, with the final PO.
I agree with Councilor Lindell that I think this division is not funded well enough. I think we keep asking everyone to do more with less, and I concur with her on that. And with that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Councilor Lindell.
I'll make this very short, Chair. Thank you. I do want to completely agree with Councilor Villarreal about how hard and it ties right into what I was saying. It's really, really hard to say no to expansion. It's hard for us too, but once again, this budget doesn't allow for much expansion. In fact, I think that we're overwhelmed with what we're asking you to do now with this budget. And in line with Councilor Rivera's comments, it almost seems like we're turning Driscoll into another recreation center. And I'm concerned about us doing that with the exact same budget and the exact same staff that we have now. It doesn't make, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you stretch any thinner than you are now, because I know that folks work super hard, and you know, sometimes we get plaudits, but a lot of times we get some criticism, and it is not deserved on you, that kind of criticism. And I'm concerned about it, and I'm concerned that we keep taking on more and more and more with the exact same resources, and a +1 on personnel to me is just doesn't make any sense to me how we're going to make this work. I don't know if I can support this budget or not, Chair, and it's not because and it's because I'm not convinced it's enough. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Councilor Lindell. Councilor Harris.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion here in just a minute, but I had a follow-up question to Councilor Rivera, and this is something I should have asked earlier. But in the vacancies, is our integrated pest management person, is that position filled, or is it still vacant?
Mr. Chair, City Councilors, Councilor Harris, the position has been also open for a while. I don't know how long, maybe a year or so. But I do have news on that. The position was posted. I have the list of eligibles, and we will begin interviews on the 1st.
Okay, well, you know, we somehow we avoided talking about it, you know, tonight as well, or this afternoon as well as in the past, or you know, the past couple of months, I should say. But it's a critical position, and of course we had in Mr. Lucero we had an individual set a very high standard. So I wish you luck in filling that position. That's, you know, there's a lot to be said, has been said, and probably there's more to come, but I would like to make a motion if you agree, Chair.
Okay, but I will, but quickly, we are increasing the budget, though, but from last year's.
At 0.8%.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. There is an overall increase of close to 6%, or $1 million. The majority of that is coming from the general fund. So we are seeing a 9% increase in the general fund that is allocated to the Parks and Rec Department.
Okay, so Councilor Harris, go ahead. Hear your motion.
Thank you, Chair. So I would make a motion to approve the budget for FY20 for Parks and Recreation Department with the following amendment. I would increase the service contracts line item within the Parks and Trails and Watershed division of that department by an amount of $320,000. It just represents, I mean, again, remind you of the numbers. 217 is what's in this year. They have done their work, proposed a 100% increase. This represents about a 50% increase to that particular line item. Just as a follow-up, some things that I've made note of, and you know, utilization factors. Although we talked about it for Salvador Perez, I think that it's the same discussion that you initiated, Chair, on the after-school program. It's the same discussion about Driscoll. I think there really has to be, you know, a critical look at, and that's what you've heard from this committee today, is that we've consistently raised expectations and we just can't deliver. And unfortunately, you know, you guys take the brunt of it, and that makes you for a very difficult job. So whether it's the examples I've used, including Driscoll, I think we really need to look at some of the programs that we offer that perhaps we can no longer afford to offer. And I would also like to know some of the claims history. This is part and parcel. I know at a citywide level we're working on safety programs, and as you consolidate your work and start to break it down, and this is not an overnight thing, I realize that, but I really think we should be trying to consolidate as soon as possible. But anyways, that's a little bit of a speech as well as the motion, but that is my motion, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion. I will second it for the purpose of discussion. So we're going to increase the budget. The motion is for, did you say $320,000?
$320,000, yes, sir.
So do you, you presented to us a balanced budget. So in order for it to stay balanced, do we need to look for $320,000 in cuts moving forward? Or do you think, what are the different options for addressing that? Or Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Let me just, since Councilor Harris's motion included a small discourse.
Yes, it did.
Would it be appropriate if I said a few things now? First of all, I think this has been a really productive session. I think Parks and Recreation is one of our most valuable, important departments. It touches at least as many and probably more lives in the city than any other department when you think about all the points of contact that are involved and at all ages and in every single neighborhood. And I think the review today really reflects just how seriously the committee and the council takes this department. And I think my personal preference would be rather than taking a vote right now with that one amendment, because there were so many really useful comments made, my personal preference would be to table this budget at the moment, create a small working subcommittee with the chair's permission, and sit back down and go through it with a really fine set of criteria, concerns, and also to look at where there might be changes to the expenditure side as well as the revenue side, the expenditure side, the shared expense side. I think the concerns are completely warranted. I don't think anybody believes that we are able to fulfill all the expectations in Parks and Recreation. As the Director, John Munoz, has pointed out to me in the past, we even are at odds with ourselves in our interdepartmental policies. We require new developments to have a park. And then we wonder why our staff is spread so thin. And the answer is because under our own requirements, we are creating more than the 77 parks that we have, and then asking people to take care of what is deeded over to the city with the expectation that it's a good thing, but not with the expectation that it's a sustainable expenditure. So I really think the conversation today was really productive and highlighted the extent to which everybody up here cares about this for the right reasons. And so I think you could certainly go ahead with the vote, but my own personal thinking is rather than treating this as a dire emergency where a vote today is essential, given the level of engagement, I would suggest a tabling motion and a small working subgroup to bring it back and try to incorporate the concerns that have been expressed.
Councilor Harris, you are the maker of the motion. I'll give you an opportunity to comment and potentially withdraw the motion if you want, or if not.
Well, I think I would, excuse me, but there was a motion and a second. I would just soon take a vote on that and then consider another motion in line perhaps with what the mayor has proposed.
Okay, and if I'm correct, though, if we get a motion to table, that supersedes a motion to a pending motion, right? Okay. So is there a motion to table?
Motion to table.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to table. A second. Any further discussion? Counselor Rivera.
So your proposal, Councilor Harris, was not to increase the 217 by another 320,000.
Yes. Okay. Okay, we have a motion to table. Yes. Okay, so we have a motion to table. We're gonna call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, so it's been tabled. Mayor, we will discuss a subcommittee and who we want to sit on the subcommittee. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I give a quick general?
Yeah, if I may say, you know, I think this is a prudent course. I have no real problem. But I'm assuming that is something that will be initiated in short order and that, in fact, we'll have it resolved by the time we take a final vote on the budget.
You and I share that.
Okay.
Manager Litzenberg.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, just a general statement because I heard some frustrations throughout that discussion about just now getting these sheets. Just in general, what these sheets are very good for is what we just watched during this session, which is when somebody's looking at page 25, they can say, I'm on page 25 of the fold, and we can all go to page 25 of the fold. That being said, all of this exists in OpenGov, so you have the ability
We don't
to
have logins.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that, Counselor?
What'd you say?
We don't have logins for OpenGov.
Okay, so we can
Looking at it on a screen that's 10 inches by 8 inches doesn't get it for me.
Counselors, I understand it's not the best tool, and we'll continue to try to provide these in a timely way, but just in general, you do have the ability to review these budgets on OpenGov if we can get you a valid login to buy you more time to review. It's just a general statement. I understand it's hard.
Right. But we've had this discussion in the past prior to your service as city manager, when OpenGov on the screen does really not serve our interests very well. I think we need to have a spreadsheet, we need to have documents that we can move quickly through, and we need to have the time to do it. So, again, my statement remains. We need this information. I do not want to go through a presentation by our municipal court judge trying to figure out what happens on page 25 for the next department. So, anyways.
Okay, we're going to move on. Community services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Parks and Recreation. Thank you, staff.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Since we've gone over on this budget, what is your plan for the afternoon? There are 3 members of your finance committee that have another meeting that starts at 5 o'clock across town. So I just wanted to get a sense from you what your plan is for the afternoon.
Thank you, Councilor Romero-Worth. Do you think we need to finish then by 4:30 to get you to your meeting, or do you want to?
4:45.
You're good with 4:45?
Or 4:40, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so at 4:30 we will wrap up wherever we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Okay, community services. Welcome.
Give us 45 minutes to run through this really quickly. Just kidding.
That's fine.
No, we will take your time. If we run out of time, then we just pause and we pick up where we're at next week. So don't feel like you have to rush, okay? Because we did that with constituent services the other day too. Thank you.
Chairman Abeyta, Mayor, Councilors, thank you for hearing from Community Services here at the end of the day. I'm Kira Ochoa, the Director. I'm here with my staff, Edith Martinez, Office Manager, Jeff Donlin, Acting Library Services Division Director, Julie Sanchez, official title Youth and Family Services Program Manager, working title Community Programs Director, Manager Extraordinaire. And Gina Rinaldi, our Senior Services Director, is at a AAA conference in Las Vegas, Cruces. So we've got Tita Gonzalez is here, Program Manager for Senior Services. Richard DeMella, Youth and Family Services Division Director, is driving kids from school to the Monica Roybal Center, so he's not here. But Edith Martinez knows that budget really, really well. So I think we're really well represented. I am honored to be directing this incredible group of people in this department. I've inherited an incredible resource in all of the knowledge and the people that are so dedicated to serving all the people of Santa Fe, especially our seniors, our children, everybody who comes into our libraries, and newly everybody served by the municipal public defender, as well as the many others served really from cradle to grave throughout our city in the programs that Julie manages through the grant-funded programs that we support many of our nonprofit organizations. So with that, I'll give you a little overview of the highlights of our budget. Most of our increase is out of salaries and benefits, which we're very gratified about. I think, again, you can't invest enough in the people who serve the people of Santa Fe. Some of these folks are, respite workers who take care of senior citizens. They're cooks, they're drivers in the senior program, they're youth specialists who painstakingly spend time with children in our after-school and youth programs, and librarians who will do everything from find you the book you're looking for to serve a grandma who walks into the reference desk with her young child and says, I'm fleeing from my husband, but I can't take my granddaughter to the shelter because I don't have custody of her. What should I do, right, to a librarian? So not to be pulling too much on your heartstrings, but that's the people that we serve. That's the level of service that the Community Services Department staff provides. In this budget, the increase is 1.5% over last year, and we've had some structural changes which reflect why that's actually sort of a low number. In the administration, the big change was that our LEAD program came and went into the fire department, so the case management is going to be done by the MIHO team, as you know. That represented a $250,000 decrease in the budget there. And then we are also getting some increase with this $25,000 for a mentoring program, which we intend to thread through our Youth and Family Services program as well as our libraries, as well as that we will also get if you approve the budget, a navigator for the first time for the department who will, in this proposal, be primarily housed in the Senior Services Division. What is a navigator? A navigator is essentially a person who helps somebody through the system. One of the main projects that I'm working on is going with the grain of what we've had, but really bolstering it into a level where we're asking the citizens of Santa Fe about their social needs in a uniform, standardized way. We're asking about their housing needs, their transportation needs, their food needs, their personal safety needs, their utilities needs, and we're really asking about their education and employment needs as well as their behavioral health needs. There's a standard way of asking this so that when we get the answers, we can provide them with the resources they need to resolve those things to contribute to their overall health and well-being. So that's a system that is best implemented by human beings who care about the people they're serving. These navigators are typically people from the communities who know the communities, are trusted members, can establish relationships. And for seniors in particular, Meals on Wheels drivers are seeing, just increased need among this population, especially as they live longer and are experiencing memory issues and dementia issues. So that navigation position in seniors is really, really key, getting them connected to things that are going to make their life safer and better. And we hope to sort of start with that senior navigator and grow that to a navigator in the libraries, a navigator for the Youth and Family Services. Interestingly and excitingly, in this Human Services Committee funding cycle, which the committee just made its decisions on the awardees. we've been able to grant navigator or support navigator positions in the nonprofits that we fund, which will go to bolstering and creating a network that was began at the county and is so that there are an interconnected network, not only of our direct services in city and county, but in the nonprofit community. So the clinics and the shelters and the school programs are connected by navigators who meet regularly and know each other, but also use an IT system that is shared among them. So another proposal, which is really no increase to the budget because it comes out of Human Services Committee, will be 20 logins for this system, which will again allow people to know what's happening when they send a referral. Is it being met or not met, et cetera. So that's kind of a system change that we're excited to begin implementing, again, with not a lot of extra cost. The library system will see a 6.8% increase, which is really great because library positions have been hard to fill. They haven't been paid competitively, and we hope that this increase will assist with that. There is a slight loss, as you see, with the GEO bond loss. And in seniors, don't be alarmed by that decrease that you see in the summary of 209,700. That we expect will be made whole with the grant funding we received. We weren't able to put the grant funding from the state into this budget because we don't know what it is yet. And so we imagine that we don't expect to see that decrease this year, and we imagine that seniors budget will be made whole and essentially be a flat budget. Not a fat budget, a flat budget. The Youth and Family Services Division sees a slight increase, and that is actually from the comp and class, hopefully, and the 2% raise for some of the hardest working, lowest paid folks, the youth specialists, personnel services, because we believe those seasonal workers and those temporary workers are going to be put into a pool instead of, it's not called salaries and benefits, it's called personnel services, but that's representing those people. And then consulting is not so much consulting as a contractual increase that we got from an exciting increase from our UIFD grant for the regional juvenile justice work. We got a $67,000 increase in that line item this year to serve and divert youth from detention with programs in the community. We also, not last but not least on this budget, request a $1 million capital investment into the Southside Teen Center. As you know, we were fortunate to be granted $1.1 million by the state, and that 2.1 should allow us to do a phase 1 of the Southside, of the long anticipated and much needed Southside Teen Center. And with that, I will stand for questions.
All right. Is there any questions from the committee? Councilor Harris, would you like to start?
My enthusiasm showing? Actually, I have a lot of enthusiasm for the Community Services Department. I attended a session, at least half of the session of the Municipal Drug Task Force today. And maybe let's start there, because so we know, as you said, Ms. Ochoa, that we're moving, or the LEAD program has moved into the MIHO. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I don't see any mention within, your goals for the department of kind of substance abuse issues. To what degree will your department deal with or try and respond to whatever initiative it may be? Is it, if it's an internal initiative, or is it coming external? But talk a little bit about that if you could, or maybe you have no responsibility. The department has no responsibility.
Chairman Abeyta, Councilor Harris, we have a strong responsibility, which we will continue to move forward in two ways, and I'll have Julie Sanchez also answer this. One way is by doing a restructure of our committees where we will have the Human Services Committee become a community health council that does strategic planning. And I will tell you that one of the number one things that they will discover in their strategic planning is that we have an epidemic in our community that has to be addressed. That every strategic plan that looks at health issues in Santa Fe finds that. It did at the county, it will, and it has here at the city, and it will unfortunately continue to do so. Therefore, those then become our marching orders for that funding, and also for marshaling more funding through our department to really address that. One of the things I didn't mention in my overview is that a big goal I have is this is a department that's ripe to receive federal and state funding and should be receiving quite a bit more than it is. A goal I have is to increase by at least $1 million in the next 3 years.
Exactly. And I was going to head to my next question. I mean, I've been somewhat critical in the past, but overall, I don't think the city does enough in terms of grants funding.
Yeah.
And I did see that in your list. It wasn't specific to substance abuse or anything else, but I think that it's really going to be, it's incumbent upon you and your department to really work strongly towards grants.
Yes, I agree.
A better and healthier, more robust response to the grants that are potentially out there.
Thank you.
But anyways, to make sure I understood your question, so Human Services becomes the community health.
Whatever we end up calling it, it's the central brain. It's the umbrella committee or council that will inform the governing body on issues of health and quality of life.
Right. So so that's that covers so many issues, and substance abuse will fall in that column.
Mm-hmm.
But would that be kind of the extent? Do you believe?
No, I think it won't. Julie, do you want to jump in on this?
So Counselor, Chair, so right now the Drug Strategy Task Force is actually coming up with recommendations to present to this governing body. And the reason it hasn't really been included in this budget is because they're really waiting until the next budget cycle to start figuring out where funding should go. One of the recommendations that I know will come to the governing body is a potential full-time position, possibly through the mayor's office, to implement the strategies and recommendations that they're going to bring forth. And so where that funding comes from, whether we find a federal or state grant, that's something that's to be determined.
Okay, all right. I assume, again, from the conversation earlier today, I knew there was a measure of responsibility that the department was going to accept to try and address the issue. I just didn't see it listed here. So that's why I wanted to ask. I want to talk a little bit about library. I sat down with the two gentlemen from Godfrey and Associates last week or the week before, and one of the things I heard from them, and it actually is phrased a little bit differently here, but it seems to be similar. So, hire a new division director who will engage with and complete the library planning study, which, unfortunately, I think is taken far too long. And so when I'm a projects guy, so I always ask about schedule. The answer I got was, we don't know, because the library cannot, the individual who provides the data on things such as how many books we have, we've not been able to provide that information to our consultants. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but that's what I'm told. And that seems to be reflected in this statement here. We really can't wrap it up until we have the director in place and perhaps some of these other positions. Maybe we're going to head for a 22nd century library. How's that? Sorry.
Chairman, Counselor, unacceptable to me. So speaking to the timing on the libraries, it's a big issue.
It's a big issue.
And currently, there are about 8 open positions, including the division director position, in the libraries. This has placed a tremendous burden on our acting division director, Jeff, who has put in upwards of 60 hours a week at times to cover everything from reference library desk to technician services. We have a structure in the libraries that's a little challenging in that the branches demand staffing specific to those branches, which doesn't need to be that way. So we're working with HR on a restructure there so that people can be more fluid between branches and cover shifts between branches. We're exploring whether that's possible with our union contracts as well. So there are a number of, flashy answers to why things have taken so long with the study. But the primary reason the study took a long time to get off the ground was that the Friends of the Library, who are tremendous supporters of the library and without whom we could not really do so much of the interesting programming that we're able to do, felt very strongly that they wanted a seat at the table in the planning steering committee on that study. And after the contract was signed in July of last year, this was before my time, it took about 3 months for Nick Schiavo, 3 to 4 months, to negotiate an MOU with the Friends of the Library for their participation on the study. At that point, our then director, Pat Hodap, went on medical leave for 3 months, and Jeff, who had been working part-time but had directed a library system in Colorado, came on board. So, not to excuse the delays, but there are reasons why. And the other thing is that we have a very antiquated data system, and we don't have easy access to our data in the libraries, and that's part of the 21st century library. So it's a bit of a catch-22 in terms of getting data. We're super committed to getting them what they need. And most importantly, we're super committed to engaging the community in the process of envisioning for the libraries, which will really inform next year's budget request on the libraries and where we're going as a community.
Okay, so I understand. I've heard that before, and you don't offer it as excuses, but I'm here to ask, when are we going to be able to wrap this up?
August.
Okay. Consultants, well, you kind of rolled your eyes on that.
Well,
consultants are not convinced because, I asked them the same thing. They said August with several caveats. So,
Jeff, do you want to
talk to your consultants? Yes, sir.
So, Council, I can say a few things. So, in terms of getting data out of the system, we lost our last. We had our library systems manager. There was no redundancy for a lot of knowledge in the library, and she was like the last one who knew how to do this, who left in January or February. So we've been working since then to have an agreement with our software vendor whereby they would do some of the work and provide some of the expertise that this person did before. So we're about to complete that, but we've just had some hitches and it's dragged on. So when we have that, we'll be able to get the consultants their info and also continue with some of the work we haven't been able to do within the library. So.
Well, first of all, we've not met. Thank you I know you've really jumped in and to a certain extent saved the day. I don't know, that might be an overstatement, but I've only heard very good comments about your work and the service you provide to the city. That's it for me right now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ochoa, for your budget presentation. And the one thing I want to talk about is the $1 million for the teen center. And what I want to do is I want to educate, I guess, maybe the newer members of the council, because what I've discovered is on May 21st, 2009, we have a professional service agreement that we entered into with Matei and Associates. The scope of services was the architect shall provide the following services for the city: architectural services for the proposed Zona Teen Center, and it shall include at a minimum the provisions of design, including drawings, business plan, and first opinion of probable cost. So that was May of 2009, 10 years ago. September of 2010, they delivered the plans to the city of Santa Fe. Then, April 29, 2015, a resolution was adopted by the city council that it was a resolution directing staff to propose an operational plan and programming options for the establishment of a teen center that would benefit the youth of Santa Fe. In that resolution, be it further resolved that there is an ambition to open the teen center by 2019, and staff is directed to present the plan, programming options, and fiscal impact to the governing body within 90 days of adoption of this resolution. That was April of 2015. February 10, 2016, the governing body adopts another resolution directing staff to design, develop, and implement a pilot teen resource center that would benefit the youth of Santa Fe. And there again, be it further resolved that staff is directed to formulate and bring forward for adoption a development plan for the zone of the sold property in accordance with the lease agreement of the property dated April 2015, and consult, plan, and work together in good faith with the city leasing the formulation of the development plan in order that a teen resource center be established at the zone of the sold property by 2019. And so I'm glad to see that not only, Mayor, have you proposed $1.1 million in your budget, but also our state legislature has recognized the need and the work that this city has put in towards building a teen center on the south side. And they've allocated $1.1 million towards that effort. So this isn't anything new. I mean, this is over 10 years old, and this location isn't anything new. We've known for over 10 years, and now even our local delegation knows. And again, our citizens vote for them too. They vote for their state legislatures. They vote for their senators. I intend on approaching Santa Fe County, and I've already started talking to some of the county commissioners about potentially contributing towards the construction of this teen center. And while I'd like to take credit for the teen center, obviously I can't. This is something that has been around for much longer than I have been, and actually you may. But Councilor Rivera, you've been working on this for years and years, as well as the rest of the governing body. So I'm glad to see it as part of this budget. I'm grateful to our state legislature for the funding they have given us, and it looks like that finally, almost 10 years to the date, we may land up with a teen center on the south side. So thank you for that. That's really my question and my comments. Anything else from the committee? Councilor Rivera.
Mr. Chair, I assume that you have the same pages that we do.
I believe we do, sir.
On page 12, and it's not a big decrease, but senior services nutrition program on salaries, there's a decrease of like 40,000. Didn't you say that program was increasing and the need was increasing? I'm just curious if why not more people instead of...
Chairman Abeta, Councilor Rivera, that's can be attributed to the grant money that hasn't yet come in from the state. We would expect to see that line item increase once that money comes in.
Okay, and that's for salaries and wages? Correct. Okay. On page 20, it talks about vehicles greater than 1.5 and being a recommended budget of 459,000. Is that going to replace the entire fleet, or is that a certain amount?
I'm going to refer that question to Ms. Gonzalez.
Councilor Rivera, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure I can get an answer from our director. I know him and Romella have been working real closely with our capital outlay funds to replace our vehicles, but I can... Councilor, we can get a specific answer on that. I will say that issues of safety were raised today at this council. The fleet that our senior services drivers use and drive our most vulnerable citizens is in true need of attention. And so I can't answer your specifics, but we can certainly get back to you on that.
These are vehicles that are less than 1.5, so those are like regular cars.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said the vans, but the homemakers who transport people and also get to homes in those smaller vehicles.
can get that information, you can email me or however you want to get it. What is, I'm sorry, the Veterans Program looks like they have 37 for service contracts, another 18 for grants and services, and then another 15 for operating expenses. And they have a pretty good budget. Last night we passed the banner program. Can any of that funding be used for that banner program?
I'm going to refer that question to Julie Sanchez, who oversees the staffing of that committee.
So, Councilor Rivera, the funding for the Veterans Advisory Board is really based on their priority areas. Those priority areas include education. So there's a scholarship that is given to the Santa Fe Community College to support veterans and their dependents. There's also funding to support homeless veterans and homeless veterans support services. So far, they've actually served around 42 of our local veterans and prevented homelessness in about 12 of those. They also support other veteran activities and events. So it could potentially be a possibility, but I know that that amount of funding is very limited.
All right. If that can be looked at, that would be much appreciated. I don't know. I understand that that goes to some good programs already, so I'll leave that up to you. What is the playground program?
Chairman, Counselor, that's for the after-school and summer youth program.
Okay.
And I'll just, Chairman and Council, make the point that one of the features of the Community Services Department, as many of you know, is that funding decisions are made by committee in large part. And so we really rely on the engagement of those committees with their communities to come back and tell us how they want to do it, and we support that and give them guidance on what is and is not possible with the funding that we manage to help to manage for them.
A couple of years ago, there was a question about whether the schools were going to allow us to use their facilities. We haven't had any problems or any issues with that this year as far as summer program goes.
Chairman, Counselor, I'll refer that to Edith Martinez, who just said no, but I'll let her say no in more detail.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Rivera, we have met, and we do meet yearly with the public schools, and they are looking to do a new MOU with us for the programming, and just in regards to even the facilities for the summer usage. But as of right now, they're more than willing to let us utilize the facilities for the summer program.
And they're still the facilities that make the most sense for our kids?
So how it's determined is depending on where there's construction at the school sites. So they look to see what's not under construction in the summer, and that's what they submit to us for usage.
Okay. If we can, while you're looking at that MOU, and a couple years ago they recommended Amy Beal, and that seemed a little far out for most of our city youth to get to. So if we can keep that in mind if we're negotiating an MOU.
Great. Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll start with the easy question, move backwards. On your senior services, provide 7,845 units in homemaker, units in transportation, units in respite. What is a unit?
Chairman, Counselor Romero Worth, a unit is the way the state measures what we provide for food, for transportation, for respite, and we match those.
So is that a person?
It's not a person, and I'll let Ms. Gonzalez give you some more detail on that.
Okay.
Councilor Romero Worth. So a unit for, you said the homemaker, a unit would be 1 hour, and for the meals, 1 meal is 1 unit. One transportation ride is 1 unit.
And respite care is 1 visit?
Respite care is 1 hour, is 1 unit.
Okay. 30 units in grandparents raising grandchildren, 1 hour?
The units for grandparents raising grandchildren is, I believe it's specific amount that is assisted to each the child that they're raising. So that would be a unit of
what's the
$100.
amount of time, amount of money,
amount of money? I believe it's $200 is a unit.
Chairman, Councilor Romero-Worth, on that very important program, which we hope to grow through grant funding, those are, Ms. Gonzalez is correct, those are $200 units per grandparent per year. And that's for flexible funding, used to pay for a school supply or something like that. And it doesn't go anywhere near meeting the need. On the difficulty of counting in units versus people, we're really working to count in people and unduplicated people, and the IT system that I mentioned, which the senior navigator will use, will help us to really get our arms around people and their needs and whether we're meeting them. And the unit issue we'll never be able to avoid as long as we take state funding, but we can do, we definitely think in people, not units.
So on that one, 30 units in grandparents raising grandchildren, so it's 30 times 200?
Should be.
And then it's
60.
Yeah, and is it always $200, or could you give less or more, or?
Per the state regulations, it's always $200. Although if we got other sources for that funding, we could increase it.
Okay. I'm glad Councilor Harris asked about the library planning study. I'm interested in seeing that when it happens. I see here $25,000 for a mentorship program. I assume that's the mentorship program that the mayor and others may be participating in. What's that $25,000 going to do?
Chairman, Councilor Romero-Worth, that is new to me, relatively new, so we're going to be developing the use of that in working with what's been done out of the mayor's office, and my immediate thoughts, have to do with just the coordination and the support of the program to make sure that the goal of every youth who wants a mentor has one can be met.
Is that our program? I thought that was a program coming out of a nonprofit in the community. It's who, Santa Fe?
Inspire Santa Fe.
And do they have their own funding?
No, Chairman, Councilor, no, they do not.
Are they a 501c3?
Chairman, Councilor, I believe they are.
And so are we giving this $25,000 to them, or we're helping, or we're appropriating staff time
Chairman,
in the city
Councilor Romero-Worth,
to help them?
I
don't know.
I don't know the answer to that yet, and I probably can't get back to you. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can, but that was a new introduction to the budget very recently, and I need to explore the uses of that and the intentions of that. As the Director of Community Services, my goal is to first use our own direct services as avenues to engage with other nonprofits with nonprofits in the community. So again, I mentioned the Youth and Family Services Division and the Libraries Division. How could those be integrated into the mentorship program is something I'm interested in exploring, but I can't answer your specific question on how we will use that money. I don't think it's been earmarked in any specific way that I know of yet. I could defer that question to the finance director.
Or the
Mr.
city
Chair,
manager who's
Councilor,
just ready to jump in.
Yeah, we'll all nod the same way to say it hasn't been earmarked yet, but what we wanted was something that was in the budget that could recognize that as a desire. And as Director Ochoa said, I think if she finds a better way to do this along the way, then we'll get that report back.
And so how did we pick the number? Just nice round number?
Chairman, Councilor Romero-Worth, I'll defer to the finance director on that.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Romero-Worth, this is a starting point. We're considering this a pilot program for a mentorship program that the City of Santa Fe will develop, and I think that's why some of the details will be unfolding, and we'd be more than happy to come back in front of the Finance Committee and the governing body to present that. I think that's absolutely warranted. But this is a pilot program. It might stay at 25,000. It might grow in future years. So this is our attempt to provide every youth in Santa Fe the opportunity to have a mentor if they so desire.
Right, and I think the program goals are laudable. I just thought this was being handled by an outside nonprofit who might have more fundraising capacity, and so I would be curious to know what our commitment is and what we're spending money on and what the future projection of that might be. And
On that point?
Yeah, go ahead.
My understanding was Inspire Santa Fe, we participated in it as a partner funder, but they have other funding sources. I'm not sure if it went through department funding, but I thought it was a grant in the past that we had given Inspire Santa Fe to be part of the program. And that didn't necessarily always mean that we would have mentors within the city, but there was also mentors throughout our city with partners with nonprofits and businesses, et cetera. So I'm confused, and I guess the clarity will help when you find out. We have always supported, well, not always, in the past few years that I've been here, we've been a partner. It's just I don't know how the money, if it went through the grant cycle or if it went through another source. So maybe that was a piece that we...
And are we talking about that, or are we talking about the city of Santa Fe doing its own mentoring program where students can mentor with the city? And so we're not talking about Inspire or another nonprofit.
Chairman, I'm going to defer to Mayor Weber.
So to provide a little context, one of the recommendations of the year-old transition group about education and the city's role with young people was that mentoring is probably the most significant investment the city can make in the lives of young people. If you look at data about what's going on in our country, more and more young people are simply disconnected to any adult who takes an interest in their life. There's a terrific book written by the same sociologist who wrote Bowling Alone has written a book about his return to his community where he grew up in Middletown, Ohio, and the difference between kids who fall between the cracks and kids who have a shot at a future is an adult who takes an interest in their life. Sometimes it's a coach, sometimes it's a scout troop leader, sometimes it's just a friend in the neighborhood. But I think when I learned that and when I looked at the opportunity for the city to make a difference, I also realized that there is a national and international mentorship association and affiliation programs that are trying to reach out across the country to make mentoring a really deep-rooted part of how we're challenging cities to step up. What's happened informally is that people in the city administration, including me and the city manager and others, now and our public works director, are acting as mentors. Max, who was here the other night, is my mentor. And we're trying to model that behavior, but at the same time we are working with the folks in Inspire to say, can we become a member of this national and international effort to use mentorship to make a difference? And how would we scale a program so that any high school youngster in Santa Fe who wants a mentor in the next 3 years gets one? So the program design exists and the international and national network exists. What doesn't exist at the moment is the capacity to deliver that program, and the details are to be worked out, and we simply parked a little bit of money in this account saying it is a commitment that I think no other city in the United States has made this commitment. There is no city in the United States that has said any young person in our city who wants a mentor gets one. If we achieve that, we will be leading the way on something that is proven with real social science and data to make a difference in the lives of young people. So the money is simply there as a placeholder while we work with Inspire folks and get plugged into the national mentorship network to be able to scale, bring this to scale. In the meantime, everybody's right who has said, oh, I thought there were programs like this all over the city. There are. I mean, in many respects, Big Brothers Big Sister is a mentorship program, and there are pieces all over the city. There's also a table on mentorship that the Santa Fe Community Foundation has assembled, and we'll be working with that table. As mayor, I think this is $25,000 really isn't the issue. It's the commitment to try to make this happen that's the issue for me. I think it would be comparable to some of the other firsts that Santa Fe has done on environment, on humanitarian issues. This would be a commitment we could make to our young people. We don't run the schools, but we want to partner, to Councilor Rivera's point, we want to partner with the schools on facilities. Why not also partner on human, capital development, kid development, and mentorship is, from what I've read and learned, is a enormously huge opportunity at very low cost.
Well, and I think the mentoring should take place here with the city if we're going to have separate funding for it, because as part of your committee process, you already are funding mentoring programs throughout the city. So that's where I'm kind of confused. Wouldn't that be the more appropriate place to fund that out of?
Chairman Abeta, councilors, I think you're right that the $25,000 doesn't represent funding for Inspire. It should not, in my opinion, because we have other mechanisms to do that.
I was thinking like stipends for the mentees would be menteed with the city of Santa Fe would be, maybe a use for that.
It might be helpful for us to do a presentation to council on proposed models for mentorship and what the funds could be used for. It, as my understanding, it really is a placeholder to say this is important to us. We don't quite know how we want to do it, but it is an internal commitment. The mayor mentioned coordination, the need for coordination and promotion of the program. That is a theme that runs through the department and the work. We have so many wonderful nonprofits doing things in our community, but they're not always coordinated. They're not always reaching every part of our city. They're not always, nobody doesn't always know about them. Perhaps some, part of this could be for promoting the program, but I think coordination and promotion, stipends is a really nice idea to grow, but it's very much in exploratory stages.
Okay, but now we've had the discussion, so you could put something
Thank you.
for us.
Will
Given
do.
what we're already doing, your different funding sources at this 25. Okay.
Happy to do that.
Can we end now and come back to this? Sorry.
Yeah.
We need to be at another meeting at the rail yard at 5.
Okay. So we're gonna adjourn then, and we will pick up our next budget hearing is gonna be Tuesday at 1, right? And we'll start or continue with community services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, may I ask a question
Yes.
of Ms. McCoy? What should our expectation be for the balance of the packets?
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Harris, we will provide all of the budget detail sheets that you would like to review tomorrow. I will send out an email when those are ready for you to pick up in hard copy.
For the rest of the hearings?
Yes, that is correct. In addition, we do have some follow-up to the items that were asked in previous hearings, so I can pass that out now. There's also a list of other items that we are still working on for follow-up. If there's anything missing from here that we didn't capture in our note-taking, please shoot me an email, and we'll go ahead and make sure staff is providing that information to you.
Okay, thank you.